What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the first part of a story where Issei became an outer Otsutsuki god. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? After being stabbed by a fallen angel, Issei Hyoudou is granted a second chance in life by a wandering Otsutuki God. In return for this, he is branded the Otsutsuki's power. How will Issei tackle the supernatural with both boosted gear and the power of the Otsutsuki at the palm of his right hand? Literally. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now, let's get into part 1. In outer space, a being with pale white skin with matching colored short hair, wearing a white Karagier robe, baggy pants, and a black ribbon tied around his waist, keeping his pants pulled up, can be seen floating around Earth with his legs folded like a pretzel. His eyes appear to be closed as he was staring at the planet in thought and worry. And on each side of his head, he has small pure white horns that are curved forwards. This man is known as an Otsutsuki God, a being whose legends were told like a fairy tale. According to the folklore, Otsutsuki gods were said to be the strongest beings to exist among the supernatural. They were even rumored to be stronger than any other god. A Norse god, an Egyptian god, even the biblical god himself. Otsutsuki gods were also said to have many powers. Not just your usual see-through walls or teleport here and there powers, but powers that could even put the three factions, the devils, angels, and fallen angels, to shame. They have different unique eye abilities depending on what kind of eyes an Otsutsuki god has, and they are able to pass down their power to another person they find worthy of using. That was exactly what this particular Otsutsuki god, who has his closed eyes looking at Earth, was doing. He had been searching the planet for a potential warrior to pass down his power to. The big threat has yet to arrive. The Otsutsuki god says to himself. And I fear that I alone, and no ordinary warrior, will be strong enough to face the many dangers that await within this planet. Crossing his arms in front of his chest, the Otsutsuki god began to slowly open his eyes. As they opened, his eyes were revealed to have a grayish-black sclera, bluer eyes, and matching colored pupils. Although, his pupils were a slightly lighter shade of blue than his eyes. It is imperative that I find a suitable warrior. He continued. Whether he or she bears a sacred gear or not, I must find this person who is good in heart and make him or her a proper warrior, unlike those vessels who have been corrupted by their gifted powers and the other Otsutsuki gods who branded them. The Otsutsuki god scans his eyes around the earth, searching for his potential warrior. After 5 minutes of searching, his eyes widen as he felt a surge of power from the earth. This feeling. It's coming from a sacred gear. And it's a dragon type too. Using the powers that his eyes have, he searched deeper in that specific area of the planet, with widened eyes and furrowed brows. However, the gear itself doesn't seem to have awoken. Interested in his discovery, the Otsutsuki god teleported his way towards the area where he felt the sacred gear. Once he made it, he found himself floating above a school in Japan. Upon further inspection, he saw a sign that identified the school as Kuo Academy, a school that was once a female-only school that turned co-ed. Seeing that the school was populated, the Otsutsuki god hid his power and his visible presence so he can avoid unwanted attention. The Otsutsuki god shifted his eyes around his surroundings, floating above the building. He saw boys and girls chatting with one another and walking together towards the entrance of the building. He kept a neutral expression as he watched them enter the school, seeing them as simple humans. However, the Otsutsuki god did note that this school also has devils attending Kuo Academy as well. Which people among the humans are devils? He didn't care. He was more concerned with finding the person who has the dragon-type sacred gear sealed within him or her. His blue eyes kept scanning the humans who were entering the building as he searched for that exact sacred gear bearer. Suddenly, his eyes came to a halt when they came across one of the second-year students. His eyes widened as he felt his power signature. It's him. The one who bears the dragon-type sacred gear. The boy in question appeared to be a gentle and handsome boy to the eyes of the girls who looked at him as he walked his way into the building. He has short brown spiky hair with 2 locks behind his head, matching colored eyes, and a face that made him look like a very cute boy. Hello, Hyoudou-kun. One of the girls greeted him with a smile and a wave, getting the young man's attention. Wanting to be nice, Issei Hyoudou said hello back and gave the girl a smile of his own, making the girl blush and quietly squeal at how cute he looked when he smiled. That was one of Issei's aspects that made some of the girls form a fan club about him. Issei had a reputation at the school for being the most friendly, kind-hearted man at Kuo Academy. Some of the girls even liked him because of the fact that he had a very cute face. He seems to be friendly. The Otsutsuki god notes to himself. I shall keep my eyes on the boy who goes by this Hyoudou name and see where this will go. But that said, he continued to watch the boy as he entered the building. As Issei got in the building of Kuo Academy, he took a breath and began to make his way towards his classroom, not wanting to be late. Yo. Hyoudou. Issei stops walking when he heard a familiar voice call out to him. Turning around, he makes a happy expression to see one of his friends, who had short blonde hair and gray eyes, walk towards him with a toothy grin. Ah. Junshiro. Good morning. Once he got close enough, the man he knows as Junshiro Saji reached out his hand to shake Issei's, who kindly accepted the offer. Morning to you too, Hyoudou. Saji replies happily as they shook hands. After they've done so, the two began walking together, since both of their classrooms are in the same direction Issei was heading. So, Hyoudou, you think you'll do well on the test that's coming up next week? Issei chuckles while scratching the back of his head. Well, I have studied as hard as I could, so I think it should pay off when I get to work on the test. Ha ha ha. I'll bet. With the many aspects of biology, you'd never know what'll trip you up. Issei nods his head in agreement and faces forward to continue his path to his classroom. Along the way, Issei and Saji noticed that some of the girls were giggling in their direction. Huh. What do you think they're so happy and giggly about? Saji snorts as his lips curl up into a teasing smirk. Oh come on, Hyoudou, I think it should be obvious why they're giggling at you. Issei's eyes widen as his cheeks start to turn red. WH, what do you mean their eyes were on both of us? I don't think so, bud. Saji argues gently, his smile still intact. Knowing the reputation you've earned yourself during your first 4 days here, that face of yours will always be killing the ladies. Hehehe. Issei's face turns a darker shade of red and acts shy around Saji, earning a quiet round of coos from some of the girls who manage to get a look at his face. Come on, man. Why do you always tease me about my face? Saji chuckles lightly and pats Issei on the back. I don't mean to make fun of you, bud. I'm actually complimenting you on it. In fact, you should feel blessed that your face is as cute as some of the girls say it is. I think even Kusaka-san, and probably some of the other girls who I work with at the student council, are attracted to it too. Issei makes a confused expression when Saji mentioned the Kusaka girl at the student council. Speaking of Kusaka-san, I'm quite surprised you were able to get her to open up. Saji continues. Before you transferred here 4 days ago, and before you two first met, she was a quiet, soft-spoken girl who barely talked. But when you entered the picture, she started opening up more to us and smiled more than usual. Saji then turns his head to Issei and smiles at him. In fact, I couldn't help but notice that she's happier when you're around her. Issei laughs slightly while scratching his cheek. Well, Hyoudou-kun. Issei and Saji pause their walking when they hear a female voice from behind them. Upon turning around, they make welcoming expressions when they saw a girl they knew run towards them, or more specifically, at Issei's direction. Oh. Good morning, Rya-san. Issei greets her with a smile and a wave. Morning, Kusaka-san. Saji greets her with a nod. A second-year girl, Rya Kusaka, bows to the two while smiling. The girl had a slim and cute appearance, with her long brown hair ending in 2 short braids, with matching colored eyes and a blue headband on top of her head. After getting up from the bow, Rya approaches Issei and widens her smile with kind eyes. Hello, Hyoudou-kun. Are you doing well? Issei smiles back and nods. Indeed, I am, thank you. And please, Issei is fine. I'm not into formalities. Rya's eyes slightly widen as her cheeks turn a little red, earning a quiet chuckle from Saji when he watched the scene. So, Hyoudou, Issei-kun. Are we still eating lunch together on the rooftop? Issei made a confused expression when Rya was being shy around him while poking her 2 index fingers together. Well, that is the plan. We have eaten together a few times. Rya sighs a breath while holding her hands together. Okay, that's good to hear. I'll be waiting for you there when the lunch bell rings. Issei nods his head in agreement and then smiled at her. Rya couldn't help but blush again when she saw his smiling face. Like some of the girls in Kuo Academy, Rya found Issei's face to be the most cutest thing she's ever seen. Well, ain't you the player, Hyoudou? Issei and Rya jump and shoot their heads towards Saji with bright blushes when they heard him say that. What on earth do you mean by that, Junshiro? Oh, come on, don't play dumb with me, bud. Saji continued with a teasing smirk. I know that you're trying to score a date with Kusaka-san. Issei does a spit take while Rya looked away from him with a darker blush. And then no. You've got it wrong. Rya-san and I are simply friends, and we only wish to talk to each other more, that's all. Saji lets out a laugh. Not a harsh laugh, but a kind one. Hey, I'm not judging you, Hyoudou. I think you're perfect boyfriend material for my fellow council member. Rya and Issei's faces are now an equally dark shade of red. While Rya made an embarrassed face while covering it, Issei stared at Saji with wide and white eyes. Rya-san and I are just friends, Junshiro. Stop saying stuff like that. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the 3 second years, 2 third-year girls stopped their walking when they heard Issei say what he said to Saji. The first was a beautiful buxom woman who has blue-green eyes and long crimson hair that fell down to her butt, and the second girl, who giggled at the scene between the second years, has a voluptuous figure, violet eyes, long black hair tied into a ponytail by an orange ribbon, and a bust that rivaled the Retides. Yufufufu. Ara, it looks like Kuo's cutest boy is looking flustered today. Oh? The red-haired third year raised an eyebrow and faced her friend. Do you know this boy, Akeno? Akeno giggles into her hand before setting her eyes on her friend with a hint of pink in her cheeks. Not on a personal level, but he's become quite popular when he first transferred here, Ria's, almost as popular as Hyoudou-kun. He goes by the name Issei Hyoudou, and he's mostly known by most of the girls to have the most cutest face they've seen on a boy yet. As she looks back at Issei, Akeno's cheeks started changing from pink to red. And I have to admit, even I'm starting to be hypnotized by his cuteness, especially with the reactions I just saw earlier. Akeno lets out another giggle as she continued to watch Issei converse with Saji and Ria. Ria's, however, began to observe the brown-haired boy with an unreadable expression. What the? I didn't notice until now, but I think this boy has a sacred gear. Ria's narrows her eyes at Issei as she attempts to feel out the power from the gear. And it seems to be a very powerful one, too. Maybe. Ara, don't tell me you're already attracted to him, too, Ria's. Ria snaps out of her thoughts when she heard Akeno speak to her, making the former snap her head at the black-haired girl. What, of course not. I wasn't staring at him for that at all. Oh? Then why were you looking at the cutie then? Ria's eyes narrow as she kept her stare on Akeno. Because I think he has a sacred gear. Akeno makes a surprised expression at her friend's answer. You think so? Ria's nods. It feels that way. But let's discuss this another time. We don't want to be late for our classes, after all. Akeno nods her head in affirmative, and the 2 third-year women set off to their classes, with Ria's in thought about Issei's sacred gear. However, unbeknownst to the girls, the Otsutuki God overheard their conversation, his expression neutral. I see. The next heiress of the Gremory clan plans to make young Hyoudou her servant. Well. After I study the young boy further, I'm afraid that this won't be the case. After watching the 2 third years walk out of his sight, the Otsutuki God floats off to where Issei's classroom is, seeing that he too is no longer in his sights. Good morning. Aye. It's Ice-kun-chan. Issei is taken aback with a gasp when most of the girls in his class suddenly cried out his name in happiness. The boy's cheeks dusted red when the girls were all waving hello to him and constantly yapping all sorts of greetings and compliments to him. Hello, Ice-kun. You're looking as adorable as always, Ice-chan. He beats the lost prince just on his cute face alone. Issei chuckles awkwardly at the many kind words to him. He was flattered, but sometimes, it can be too much for the young man to take, especially when it came to his face. I wonder if I should blame my mother's side of the family for cuteness or my father's side in handsomeness. Probably both. Wanting to be nice, Issei waves hello back to them with a forced smile, mostly due to how nervous he's been with all of the attention he's getting from the female population in his classroom. Why yes. Hello. Before he could say any more, Issei was forced to cover his ears due to how loud their next round of squeals and cheers were. Oh my gosh. His face is so sweet that I might die in ecstasy. Issei couldn't help but feel even more worried than ever when he saw how red some of their faces were. Was his face really that cute? Personally, he didn't think so, but his mother always told him that he was blessed with her, and his father's genes combined to be the way he is. But sometimes, he thinks that having a face as cute as his own can be a curse. Because of his popularity, not only do girls follow him most of the time while throwing out dating requests, but pretty much every boy who also attends the academy with him glares daggers at him in ultimate jealousy, as the boys in the classroom are doing right now. Damn Hyoudou bastard. First the blonde Prince Charming, and now him. Curse him. Why can't I have a face like his? Then I can get me a hot chick. Issei gave the boys who complained a sympathetic look. He really wanted the other boys to get a girlfriend, he really did, but because of how cute his face was, nearly all of the girls in the school only pay attention to him, making this another reason why he sometimes calls his face a curse. As Issei finally made it to his desk, he failed to notice the Otsutuki God watching him outside from the window the young man sat next to because of his presence being hidden. Breathing a sigh, Issei looks left at said window to look outside. A smile creeps up his lips, enjoying how beautiful the outdoors looked, with leaves blowing in the wind and a rare set of clouds with unique shapes and forms hovering up the sky. Issei really enjoyed it and was happy to see such a beautiful blue sky. With the many rainy days that occurred throughout the month, he found it refreshing to finally see a colorful atmosphere. However, his sightseeing was interrupted when he heard someone slam his hands onto his desk, causing Issei to jump and turn his head towards who did it. As he did so, Issei's eyes widen slightly as he recognizes the two boys standing in front of him to be the infamous perverted duo. One had a gray buzz cut and the other had short brown hair with glasses. The two were glaring daggers at Issei, causing a sweat drop to appear on his head. Oh, Mitsuda. Motohama. Is there something I can? Cut the spare talk, pal. Mitsuda interrupts, causing Issei to flinch a little. Cough it up, Hyoudou. Eh? Issei was confused at the buzz-cut man's choice of words. Cough up what? Don't you all act innocent, Mr. Cutesy boy. Motohama barks. We want to know your secret. What secret? I don't understand. I'm not one to keep any kind of secret. The two boys facepalmed themselves. Mitsuda then shot Issei a look. For God's sake, he's talking about the chicks. How are you getting them to like you so much? Issei developed a shocked yet embarrassed face as he placed his hands in front of himself in defense. Whoa now. I didn't ask for them to like me. It was their free will and my cute face apparently that's doing the work. For some reason, they just find me that attractive. Issei lets out a cute eep. When the two boys leaned closer to Issei with their jealous looks intact. Spare us the bullshit, Bishounen. We know good and well that it's your face that's the chick magnet. Hell, even some of the third years are targeting you. That's right. Motohama agrees while pushing up his glasses. We all know that you're able to attract this many girls because of how adorable they find your face to be. If you keep this up, you might as well have your own harem, a dream we hope to accomplish. I didn't ask for my face to be so cute. Issei complains with red cheeks. And besides, if you two say what you say, then what is this secret you claim that I'm hiding? Most of the time, the girls like you for just being cute. Mitsuda explains with anime tears. That's why we need you to tell us. Just what exactly is your… Bonk. Bonk. Back off, bastards. Yeah. Leave him alone, you good-for-nothing perverts. You're making him uncomfortable. Issei makes a sound of surprise when he saw the perverted duo down on the ground with expressions of pain. Looking upwards to see who did it, his eyes open up in surprise to see a pink-haired girl and a brown-haired girl behind them, giving the perverts an angry stare. Hey Kata-san. Murayama-san. Upon hearing their names, the two girls look up at Issei and smile in sync. Don't worry, Issei-kun, we won't let them bother you anymore. Issei scratches the back of his head at Kata's words with a shy smile. He then saw Murayama walking towards him with her hands behind her back. She's right, Ice-kun. We can't allow them to corrupt someone as pure as you. Issei couldn't help but blush when Murayama winked at him. Sure. Thanks, I guess. Well, someone's continuing to be popular with the ladies. Issei turned around when he heard another female classmate speak to him. The girl who teased him was Aika Kiryu. She has brown hair tied in two pigtails and wore pink glasses on her hazel eyes. Oh come on, Aika-san. Don't start saying things like that now. Aika giggled at the pout he gave her. Oh come now, Issei-kun, I'm just commenting on what I'm witnessing. Aika's eyes scanned his crotch while adjusting her glasses and grins perversely. Though, if you ask me, those ladies are leaving out another good part of you, if you catch my drift. Issei's face turns a darker red and covers his crotch, understanding exactly what she's talking about. Oi. Don't look there, pervert. Aika lets out a chortle while her cheeks turn red. Too late, bud. My eyes can calculate the size of any man's thing in a matter of seconds. And oh boy. Whoever becomes your girlfriend, she's gonna be in for a treat. Issei's face turns as red as Ria's hair, earning a round of coos from some of the girls who got to see it. Before anyone could say anything else, the students heard the bell ring, signaling for class to begin, making the young brown-haired boy sigh in relief as he saw his teacher walk in the room. As class was in session, the Otsutuki God paid attention to Issei and his every single action and interaction. Issei Hyoudou. That's the boy's full name. As the god watched on in thought, he took note of the boy's previous interactions and how he behaved. The young man was very kind to the humans as he interacted with them, even towards those two devils he conversed with earlier. Not that I expected him to know that they're devils. He then remembered how Issei acted when the two perverts confronted him about something the god didn't quite understand. He saw that the boy never took ill will against them and has tried to have a civil talk with them. After learning enough about the boy, the Otsutuki God nods his head. It is decided. This boy is indeed worthy to inherit my power. His blue eyes then narrow at Issei. However, I have to make sure I choose the appropriate time to converse with him and make sure that he understands what's really going on in the world. With another nod, the god continues to watch Issei do his schoolwork, seeing that he was paying attention to both the instructor and his school-related papers. The school bell has finally rung for lunch break to begin. As he was making his way towards the rooftop, Issei checked his school bag to see if the bento his mother made for him was in there, and it was. After closing his bag, Issei continued his walk. Ah. Issei, hello. Issei blinks twice when he heard another familiar male voice greet him. Turning his head towards the source, he smiles when he sees a blonde-haired man with blue eyes and a mole underneath his left eye. Oh, Kiba. How are you? I'm doing well, thank you. The second-year student, Hyoudou Kiba replies. Mind if I join you on the walk? Where I'm heading appears to be the same direction to where you're walking. Issei shakes his head, inviting Hyoudou to walk with him. While most boys would despise Hyoudou since he was seen as a prince like he was himself, Issei didn't see anything wrong with the second-year blonde. Personally, he thinks that he's a great guy to talk to, and that the other boys were just simply being jealous for the same reasons they were jealous of Issei. The two second-year boys would often converse while walking to their own destinations whenever they were on the same path. As the two started walking together, the girls of Kuo noticed them and started blushing like mad. Oh my god. The cutest prince and the lost prince walking together. Oh, dear. You don't think they're secretly dating, are they? Oh, my. That would be a twist. Hyoudou saw Issei cringe at the gossip these girls were talking about. Seriously? Issei says in annoyance. Are they still on about us being a possible couple? Hyoudou feels his pain but was much better at ignoring the gossip than Issei was. And they say men are the most perverted gender. Hyoudou says in agreement while glancing at the girls, making the ones who noticed his stare blush and quietly squeal. He then sets his stare back to Issei. So, where are you planning on eating your lunch, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, I'm heading towards the rooftop. I'm meeting a friend up there. Issei looks at Hyoudou. How about you? For me, I'm going to find the butchu and eat with her, as she plans to talk about future club activities during lunch. Issei's brows raise slightly when his friends say butchu. Do you mean Gremory-senpai? He asks him. I have heard that she's the butchu of the occult research club, and I saw you walk over to her and the Fuku butchu, Himejima-senpai sometimes after school. Yup, that's her. Hyoudou answers, his smile never breaking. The two continued walking until Issei noticed a flight of stairs leading upwards. Well, I guess this where we part ways, Kiba. It was good talking with you, even though it was for a short while. Kiba nods with a smile. You too, Issei. Have a good lunch. You too. After nodding at each other, the second-year boys part ways. Issei to the rooftop and Hyoudou to meet up with his butchu. As the two parted, Kiba was in thought about Issei and what Ria said about him and his sacred gear. On the rooftop of Kuo Academy, Ria Kusaka waited patiently for Issei to arrive. As she waited, she shifted her gaze towards two objects on each hand. On her left hand, she carried a bento that she made for herself to eat, and on her right hand, she held a cobalt blue cloth that carried a small square-shaped box. As she looks at the cobalt cloth, Ria's eyes soften and blushes a light red. I hope Ice likes them. Ria then heard the door that served as the entrance and exit of the rooftop open and close. As she turned her head towards said door, her eyes widened to see Issei walking towards her with his usual gentle smile. Hey, Ria-san. I made it. Ria smiles at Issei. I'm glad you did, Issei-kun. Issei nods his head and takes his seat next to Ria. The two then opened their bentos and began to eat their lunch. As they were, the two brown-haired students talked about what they would usually talk about whenever they got together. They discussed how the school day was going so far, any upcoming tests and assignments that may prove to be difficult, and, most of the time, any good music they listened to or any of the good shows they've watched either on TV or online. Issei always enjoyed his time with Ria. In his honest opinion, he finds himself more comfortable when he hangs out with her, rather than to hang out with random girls. Not just because she doesn't obsess over how cute his face is, but rather just how sweet and gentle he found her to be when he talked to her more and more as his time at Kuo went on. Every time he was with her, he always feels calm and relaxed to the point where he wants to be around her more often. Ria feels the same way. She didn't like Issei just because she found Issei's face to be delightful. She liked him because of who he really is, a sweet man who just wants to make friends and live life peacefully. She also found him to be her personal source of confidence. After all, he was the reason Ria was able to open up a lot more to her fellow student council members. When the two finished their lunches, Issei's eyes hovered right and saw the cobalt cloth wrapped box next to Ria's left leg. Oh? You have another bento, Ria-san. Ria gasps when she saw Issei look at the box she had and starts to get a little nervous. Oh. Well, you see. I made some cookies yesterday because I want to become a good cook one day, and I was wondering if you would like to give one a try and see how you think I did. Issei kept his stare on the box for a moment before setting his eyes back on Ria and smiles. Sure. I don't see why not. Rhea nods with her cheeks still red as she began to unwrap the cloth. With it out of the way, Rhea removed the top of the box, revealing the cookies that made Issei look at them in awe. Whoa. Are those gingerbread? Issei asks as he takes a whiff at the cookies. Wow. Those are my favorite kind. I also like how you got them into different shapes instead of them being all circles. Rhea's cheeks turn redder at the praise she was already receiving from Issei and slowly smiles. Thank you. Please, help yourself. Issei nods and took out a star-shaped cookie from the box. He then takes a bite out of it. They taste amazing. Issei says after swallowing the piece he's eaten. You did well on them, Rhea-san. Rhea gasps in surprise before her lips formed a heartwarming smile. I'm glad. She then pokes her 2 index fingers together while shifting her eyes towards the cookie box. Although, I probably put in too much sugar. No, you didn't. Issei assures her before taking another bite of his cookie. They're great gingerbread cookies, Rhea-san. You'll make a fine baker one day. Rhea's eyes widen with another blush in reaction to his compliment while her hand was on her chest. As she watched Issei finish up his cookie, her eyes soften and her smile returns. He likes them. I didn't mess them up. Hey, you know, Rhea-san. Rhea's eyes broaden a little when she heard Issei talk to her again. You should give the rest of these to your fellow members of the student council. I'll bet they'll love what you've batched up from the oven. Rhea was taken back at Issei's suggestion. Bud, these cookies are for you, Issei-kun. And I'm flattered you've made them for me, Rhea-san. But I think the student council should get a taste of them as well. Your first start as a baker can't be ignored here. Issei then blinks when he saw Rhea's unsure face. Hey, don't get me wrong. I really do like your cookies. I just thought that you should share them with your other friends too, you know. I understand what you're saying, Issei-kun. Rhea replies. But, I still. Before she could say more, Rhea looks to see Issei grabbing 4 more cookies from the box, a square, a triangle, a circle, and another star cookie, and looks back up at his face. Okay then, I'll just have myself 4 more of your delicious cookies. Issei concludes with a smile. The rest can be for the council. There should be enough in the box for them, yes. Rhea looks at the 4 cookies in Issei's hand before looking down into the box, seeing that there indeed were enough to serve her fellow student council members. Why yes, there is. Rhea confirms before looking back at Issei with her torn expression returning. But are you sure you're fine with just having 5, with one of them you've already eaten? Yeah, I'm sure. Besides, I don't think I have the stomach to eat them all today. In fact, after setting 3 of his cookies carefully on his lap, Issei breaks a square-shaped cookie in half and gives 1/2 to Rhea. Here. To celebrate your first baked goods. Rhea gasps and shakes her head. Oh, no. That's fine. I've taste tested one before bringing them here today, so there's no need. That doesn't mean you can't have another. Issei counters nicely. Please, I insist. Rhea's eyes shift from Issei to the half of the cookie 3 times, before slowly taking the half from Issei. After taking a bite and swallowing, she smiles at him. You're too nice, you know that, Issei-kun. Issei laughs softly while picking up the rest of his cookies from his lap while smiling back. I'm told that a lot, Rhea-san. Rhea giggles with Issei before resuming her half of the cookie she was given. While doing so, she continued to watch Issei savor the delightful taste of gingerbread. With every bite he took, the warm feeling of being around Issei continued to rise within her. With closed eyes, she finishes her half of the square cookie, continuing to be happy that she did well with her cookies. Now all that's left to do for her is to see what her fellow council members will think of her cookies. And with Issei's critique and his insistence that she shares the treats with them, it gave her the necessary confidence to do so after school. After the school day is over, Issei was walking across a bridge while looking up at the afternoon sky with a smile that never left his lips. Oh man, my taste buds can still feel the gingerbread. Issei says in a good way. I almost regret not telling Rhea-san to share the cookies with the rest of the student council. With a sweet laugh and closed eyes, Issei continued to walk his way home. But unbeknownst to the boy, a young girl that appears to be his age with long black hair, violet eyes, and a school uniform that didn't belong to Kuo, was walking towards him from behind. Excuse me. Issei stopped walking when he heard the girl speak to him. Turning around, he saw her walking to him and stopping her pace as soon as he laid eyes on her. Are you Issei Hyoudou from Kuo Academy? Issei blinked at the black-haired girl, who appeared to be shy while holding her hands together. Yes. Issei answers slowly with a brow raised in wonder of how she knew his name. Is there something I can help you with? With her cheeks turning light red, the girl began to respond. Yeah. Issei watches her shuffle her feet nervously with her blush turning darker. My name's Uma Amano, and I just moved into this town a day ago. And I was wondering. If it's possible, would you please show me around the town so I won't get lost in the future? Issei took a step back in surprise with Yuuma's request. He didn't expect this girl who claims to be new to the town to ask such a favor. Really? I mean. Why me? No offense, but surely, there's someone else you can ask who knows the place better than I do. Yeah, I did try and ask them. Yuuma explains with a frown in her eyes on the ground of the bridge. But every person I've asked so far is either busy with work or just straight up jerks, some of whom expecting a date out of it. And when I saw you, I figured. You were a nice enough guy to help. So. She looks back at Issei with her face as nervous as ever. Will you please show me around the town? Issei was once again left dazed by the Yuuma girl's plea. As he thought about it, he was reminded of how his mother would teach him to be helpful to those in need, especially when he got older. With his mom's lesson in mind, Issei shrugged his shoulders and nodded. Okay. I can show you around. But only to areas where I remember the most and that I'm familiar with. Will that be alright with you, Amano-san? Smiling at the response, Yuuma nodded twice. Yes. That's perfectly fine, Issei-kun. After all, I'm not planning a large tour or anything like that. Issei nods back in agreement. So, when do you want me to help you get acquainted with the town? Well, I can't do it today. Yuuma replies. One reason being how late it is and that I'm still unpacking and getting used to my new apartment. She places a hand on her chin in thought for a few seconds before snapping her fingers. I know. Does Sunday sound good to you? I'm free on that day. Why yeah. Issei answers politely with closed eyes. Guess I'll have to double my studies for next week's test tonight and tomorrow. Great. Thank you so much, Issei-kun. Yuuma skips towards him and hands him a small piece of paper. Meet me at that location on Sunday. Issei takes a look at what Yuuma wrote down and it's set to meet her in the middle of a nearby mall. See you Sunday, Issei-kun. Yuuma says before walking off while waving a hand at him. And thank you again. Issei blinks twice at Yuuma as she continued to walk her way home. By the time she was no longer in her sight, he gently stuffs the paper in his and begins to head back home. As he did, he thought about Yuuma's sudden request to show her around Kuo Town. He knows perfectly that it wasn't a date but was just him helping her to be nice. And at the end of the day, all that mattered to Issei was that she understands the town and directions more after the weekend. Looks like I'm going to have a busy Sunday. However, as he continued his walk home, Issei wasn't aware that a small, petite white-haired girl with hazel eyes was watching him carefully while eating a bomb pop. Better notify Butchu. After finishing her popsicle, the white-haired loli began to walk her way back to her Butchu. But as soon as she turned around, she froze in place when her eyes were now laid onto what she saw as a godlike being with white hair and small horns floating in front of her with crossed legs. Despite his eyes being closed, the girl could tell that he was staring right at her with a frown on his lips. The girl's eyes were contracted and her breathing was very rough because of the amount of power she felt from the being. And what terrified her the most? The power she was perceiving right now was on the level of a god. Who are? Apologies, Kaneko Taoju, servant of Ria's Gremory, but I have other plans for the boy. Before she could respond to the god's sudden words, Kaneko releases a quiet squeak when his eyes snap open, revealing to her his gray scleras and bluer eyes and pupils. He then places a hand in front of Kaneko, who still couldn't move because of how powerful he felt to her. Sleep now and forget that you've encountered Issei and the fallen angel here. Huh. Kaneko blinked in confusion before her eyes suddenly started to feel heavy. Her body then started to lose her balance as she could feel a trance in herself and began to fall. The Otsutuki God caught the now dozing Kaneko in his arms before she could crash onto the ground. He then looked at her. Even though I stopped her from informing her master about Issei's encounter with the fallen angel, I know that he will still receive a leaflet from the Gremory heiress. The only effect my actions will have is that one of the devils won't keep watch of the boy on Sunday because of what she's up to. He then looks towards the bridge and narrows his eyes. And with that fallen angel's true intentions on what she wants to do with him, I'll have to stick closer to Issei more than usual. The god breathes a sigh and softens his face towards the ground. And as much as I hate to wait, I'll have to until Sunday to brand him my power. If I do so now, and the fallen angel kills him without the boy gaining any experience in the supernatural world, all hope will be lost. With a nod, the Otsutsuki God makes plans to shadow over Issei on Sunday. But first, he had to take Kaneko back to the old school building, as that was the building he saw her walk out of after overhearing her mission to watch Issei. It was also the place where he learned that a fallen angel was suspiciously hanging around the town of Kuo. I'm home. After removing his shoes at the door, Issei walked over to the kitchen to greet his parents, both of whom smiled in his direction. Welcome home, dear. Issei's mom, Issei Hyoudou, greets in the kitchen. How was school today? Oh, it was okay. Issei answered. Hello there, son. Issei's father, Hyoudou, says with a grin, making Issei wave hello to him. Hey, Dad. Issei greets back. Nyan. The Hyudos all turned their heads towards the stairs that lead to their bedrooms when they heard meowing from upstairs. Issei's lips turned into a smile when he saw a black cat running downstairs and towards him. Oh, hey there, Midnight. How are you? Issei knelt down towards the cat when she got close enough to him and began to pet her head. His parents smile with happy stares when they watch Midnight nuzzle her face against his fingers while purring up a storm, earning a giggle from Issei as his own smile grew bigger. With a trill, Midnight propped her front paws onto his knee and pressed her face against his cheek, making Issei laugh at the wet feeling of her nose as she nuzzled his cheek. She's such a sweet girl, isn't she, Goru? Miki asks her husband with a hand on her cheek. Indeed. Goru agrees with a nod. I still can't believe how quickly she got attached to you, you know, Issei. Issei looks at his father with a smile and softened eyes. Well, it's thanks to you and Mom that I'm able to properly take care of her. He looks back at Hyudous' house cat before scratching her belly, seeing that she was on her back now. And look at her now. She's become a very happy kitty. Both of Issei's parents share a laugh with their son before Miki spoke up again. Well, anyway, I got dinner ready for you three, so you better come and get it while it's still hot. Goru laughs joyfully with his wife. Oh boy. Your cooking is always the best, Miki-chan. Oh, hush up. Issei nods at his mother with his smile not leaving his face. Thanks, Mom. He then looks at Midnight. What do you think Mom's made for you, girl? Nyan. Ah ha ha, guess we'll have to find out, eh? Getting up from his spot, Issei went over to the kitchen with his father to get a bite to eat, with Midnight following from behind as her tail swished around in excitement. Meanwhile, a pair of hazel eyes were slowly opening from what felt to the girl to be a deep slumber. Then, her eyes opened wider and shot her head up from the couch in the room of Kuo Academy's old school building. I'm still here? Kaneko questions mentally while clutching her head due to the slight headache she was feeling, confused on why she was still in the old building. Kaneko. You're awake. Hearing a familiar voice, Kaneko turned her head right and saw her friend sitting on the couch that was on the opposite side of the couch the white-haired girl was apparently lying down on. In front of her, she saw Akeno and Hyoudou looking at her with worried stares, with Rias, who was the most concerned of the three, walking towards her and knelt down to her. Kaneko. What happened to you? Rias questions while hugging her. After Akeno and I got back from important business, we found you unconscious on the couch. You've been out for 20 minutes. After Rias released her from the hug, Kaneko blinks with the same bewilderment as her masters. I don't know, but you. I know you've sent me to watch over Issei-senpai, but after that, I somehow woke up here. Everyone made a confused expression, but they could see Kaneko attempting to remember something as she kept scratching her head while wincing. Well, what about Issei Hyoudou? Rias asks next. Have you found out anything else? And what about that fallen angel? Have you found him or her? Kaneko tried to produce an answer for Rias, but as she thought about it, she felt her head hurt and forced her hands on it, making her friends look on in surprise. I'm sorry but you. All I can remember was walking in search of Issei-senpai. After that, I can't think of anything. No matter how hard I try, it's a blank, and my head hurts from trying to figure it out. Heck, I don't even know how I got back here in the state I was in just now. Rias offered Kaneko a sympathetic look and pats her on her head. It's alright, Kaneko. Just relax for the rest of the night and don't push yourself. After Kaneko nodded, Hyoudou walked up to Rias with a stern expression. Maybe the fallen angel in question is responsible for what happened to her. Rias looks towards him with cocked brows. I might be wrong, but whoever that fallen angel is, she might have hit Kaneko-chan with some kind of memory-erasing magic that made her forget about finding Issei, assuming that Kaneko-chan had come into contact with him. The girls took in Hyoudou's assumption and had mixed reactions. While Rias and Akeno had serious faces, Kaneko looked down with slightly broadened eyes, wondering if the fallen angel did make her forget finding Issei and the fallen angel. If what you say is true, Hyoudou, then this fallen angel must have some ulterior motive involving Issei. What kind of motive do you think it is? Akeno asks Rias. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, it feels like the fallen angel is preventing us from getting involved. Maybe the fallen angel wants Issei's sacred gear for his or herself. Hyoudou chimes in. That's one guess. After pondering about it for 5 seconds, Rias shakes her head. We'll have to figure it out another time. For now, you should all get some rest. Yes but you? Hyoudou nods. But what about Issei? My familiar will still be handing out flyers on the weekend. Rias explains. I made sure that as soon as she saw Issei, she would give him a flyer immediately. And after he gets his flyer, should we tail Issei-kun and make sure nothing bad happens? I'm afraid not, Akeno. If what Hyoudou assumed is correct, then that fallen angel will definitely be ready for us, even if he or she does plan something for Issei. After the three devils nod to Ria's in understanding, the group fails to notice the Otsutuki God listening into them from behind a window. The devils are under the assumption that the fallen angel is too powerful for them and are agreeing not to follow him during the weekend. Good. Now, when Sunday arrives, it'll be between me and Issei. The Otsutuki God then teleports back to the Hyoudou residence, where he'll be watching over Issei for the rest of Friday and Saturday. Later that night, back in his bedroom, Issei is currently studying intently for his upcoming biology test that will happen on Monday, with his cat Midnight resting on his lap. As he was reading his notes, Issei breathes an irritated sigh after remembering what he talked about with his parents. Flashback. You're doing what now? Issei cringes at the dinner table after telling his parents what he's going to do on Sunday, while Midnight lifted her head from her food bowl with perked up ears. It's not a date, mind you. Issei clarifies while attempting to calm his parents down. I'm just going to show her around the town. That's it. He then scratches the back of his head while looking away shyly. I'm just being nice, since she asked me, and she looked like she really needed help. After listening to what he had to say, Mickey's eyes soften at her son with a hand on her cheek. Oh, sweetie. You're doing a good thing this Sunday. I'm sure you'll do fine. Why yeah. Issei agrees. Besides, you taught me to be helpful, so that's what I'm doing. Well, good on you, my boy. Goro interjects with a smile of his own. After eating another piece of his meat, his eyes start to gleam with a teasing expression. So, after you show her around, do you plan to tie the knot? Issei, and surprisingly Midnight, nearly choke on their food when his father asks such a question. Boru-kun. Mickey scolds. Why would you ask him such a question? What? You want grandchildren just as much as I do, Mickey-chan. Aren't you curious? Of course not. In fact, if there's one girl I want my baby boy to get together with, it's that Ryakusaka girl Issei talks positively about with me whenever we talk. Oh, right. Issei quietly moans in embarrassment while hiding his face with his hair, as he was now prepared for his parents to drop question after question about how far he got in his relationship with Rya. End of flashback. Maybe I shouldn't have brought that up to my parents. Issei thought while stroking Midnight's tail. Lifting his head up from his studies, Issei looked at the time and saw that it was getting late and looks down at Midnight. Alright, girl, I'm gonna hit the hay for tonight. With a meow, Midnight jumped off of Issei's lap, allowing him to stand up from his chair. After doing so, he began to strip off his clothes, leaving his black boxers on. When he uncovered the blanket off his bead, he then noticed Midnight looking him up and down repeatedly, while her tail fluttered faster than normal. This was something Issei often found off about the cat. Whenever he would remove everything but his boxers when he goes to bed with Midnight in the room, she would always stare at him like that. He didn't know why Midnight kept doing that every time he stripped, but she did. I'm guessing you want to sleep with me again, Midnight? Issei asked while climbing in bed. Issei got his answer when she immediately ran up to his bed and jumped in just as he covered himself up with his blanket. As soon as he got himself comfortable, Issei felt mild pain coming from his pelvic region. Ow, ow, ow. Careful down there, Midnight. Issei says as he peeks under the covers to see the cat pawing his crotch for a moment before resting her head on his stomach, another thing that Midnight would do whenever she slept on his stomach or lies on his lap in general. You're a weird cat sometimes, you know that. Issei didn't get an answer as Midnight was already asleep, making him sigh a breath and cover himself back up before drifting to sleep along with his cat. 2 days later, Sunday rolls in, and Issei was currently waiting for Yuma Mono at the exact place her piece of paper told him to wait. For his attire, he wore a white Elder Futhark t-shirt with short black cashes and red tennis shoes. Excuse me. Issei turns around when he heard a woman call out to him. As soon as he made eye contact with her, his eyes widened and his cheeks turned pink when he saw that the woman, who was speed walking towards him, is quite gorgeous. She has short brown hair, matching colored eyes, and was wearing a red dress with black shoulder fabrics that look like bat wings, while carrying a darker red purse in her left hand. Before he could ask her anything, the woman quickly presented him a leaflet. Upon further inspection, Issei saw that a red circle was decorated on it. Please take one. The woman requests Issei, making the young man blink at her and the leaflet. Regardless, Issei went ahead and slowly took it out of the woman's hand, but only to see what it's about. If the flyer was advertising some kind of event, he'd most likely not be interested in it. The brown-haired woman bows her head to Issei in thanks and takes her leave. As she kept walking, she turns her head around and gives Issei a wink, taking him back a bit. Issei then takes another look at the flyer in his hand as he found some text at the bottom of the circle in the corner of his eye. The text read, "Your wish will be granted." Issei rose a brow at that and was given the impression that it was some kind of ad for something related to the supernatural. Since he found no trash cans to dispose of the flyer, Issei decides to store it in his pocket for now and toss it out at a later time. Issei-kun. Issei turns his head right and sees Yuma running towards him, wearing a purple shirt, a short teal skirt, and a pair of red flip-flops. "Sorry if I kept you waiting. I got a little lost before finding this place again." "Oh no, it's fine." Issei assures her with a wave of his hand. "I'm just glad you could find me." Brushing some strands of her hair, Yuma laughs it off with him and puts her hands behind her back. "So, where to, Issei-kun? I can't wait to properly explore what else this town has to offer." After putting some thought in it, Issei figured out where to take her to first and went towards there, with Yuma in tow. "I see, so the fallen angel did make contact with Ice. And she's a woman." Ria's Gremory took in the information her familiar gave her and nodded to herself repeatedly. "I see. So that's how it is. What now, but you?" Hyoudou asks as he takes a sip of the tea Akeno has prepared for everyone. "We wait." Ria's answers with a cautious expression. "Now that my familiar's given him a flyer, whenever he's mortally in danger, I will give him a choice." Everyone nods to Ria's in agreement. But the sip of her tea, Ria's looks down at her desk with the thought of what happened to Kaneko 2 days ago. While she was doing okay now, she still can't get the thought out of her head. Does that fallen angel know what we intend to do for Ice? I keep thinking about Hyodou's theory on what happened to Kaneko. Ria's eyes narrow at her desk. Just what is going on here? Back with Issei and Yuma, as the sun was almost setting, the two stopped by an ice cream parlor to take a break from all of the walking they've done. Before the two went to get some cones, Issei's vanilla with sprinkles and Yuma's with chocolate, Issei took her to look at the usual places he would go to himself whenever he went out on his own. He toured her through the mall first, since that was the place the two met, showing her the many shops it has and where she can find them. He then guided her to the restaurants that were the closest to his homes, the same for manga shops, game shops, music shops, etc. After showing where these places were at, that was when they got themselves the ice cream they are eating right now. "Hey thanks again for touring me through this town, Issei-kun." Yuma expresses her gratitude before taking a lick of her chocolate ice cream cone. "I'll be sure to keep those locations locked up in my memory." "No problem, Amano-san." Issei replies with a smile before taking a bite out of his own frozen treat. "I'm glad to be of help." The two were silent for a while due to them eating their ice cream, with Issei enjoying his the most because of the large number of sprinkles he was able to get loaded up on his ice cream. After she was able to finish to the point where she can now eat the cone itself, Yuma turns her head towards Issei. "So, Issei-kun, I have a question, if you don't mind." "What is it?" Issei asks with a tilted head. "Well, I'm curious." She began while dangling her shoe. "Do you, by any chance, believe in the supernatural?" "The supernatural?" Issei repeats with a raised eyebrow. "Yeah. Sorry if it's a weird question, but I thought I'd get your input on it." Issei blinks at Yuma twice before looking forwards in thought. After taking another lick of his ice cream, he gives her his answer. "To be honest, I'm not that much of a religious man, but I do like to think that there is some kind of godly force in our universe." Issei turns his head back to Yuma. "But why do you ask that, Amano-san? Do you believe in the supernatural?" To some extent." Yuma replies with a slight wave of her hand. "But honestly, I asked mostly because of the shirt you're wearing." Issei looks down at where she was pointing and saw that her finger was at the symbols on his shirt. "Elder Futhark. Are you into that kind of mythology?" Issei stares at the symbols on his shirt for a few more seconds before looking back up at Yuma. "More or less. Truth be told, I only bought the shirt because of how fascinating the meaning of the symbols are to me. I've never fully invested my time into Norse mythology, but Elder Futhark might have got me interested in looking more into it whenever I get the free time for it." "I see." Yuma mumbles before she and Issei began to eat their cones. After they finish them, she looks towards Issei after getting up from her seat. "It's getting late, Issei-kun, but I think we have time for one more place I want you to take me to." "Oh? What is it, Amano-san?" "Well, can you take me to a nearby park? Whenever I take a break from some busy stuff, I'd like to relax somewhere where it's peaceful, and I personally think that a park will do the job." Issei tilts his head at Yuma but nods after checking the time on his phone, seeing that he has plenty of time before he has to head home and sleep early for his upcoming test tomorrow. "Well, here we are, Amano-san." After walking her to her requested destination, Yuma takes a look at the park and sees that it's filled with healthy trees, fresh ponds, and appealing grass fields. In the middle of the park, a water fountain could be seen in the middle, with benches set up around it far enough from the fountain so people won't get wet. Wow. It's more beautiful than I've anticipated. Issei watches Yuma run towards the water fountain with a wide smile on her face. And the way the water flows from the water fountain, it's such a pretty sight. Issei chuckles with her while scratching the back of his head as he watched Yuma circle around the fountain 2 more times before she got in front of Issei while still being near the fountain. Well, if that's all you want to see, Amano-san, I better head back home. It's 9:30 and I need to get home so I can sleep early for school tomorrow. Okay, Issei-kun. Yuma replies with a nod and her hands folded in front of her skirt. But before you go, there's one last favor I need to ask of you. Can you perform that favor for me? Issei looks at Yuma with curiosity. Well, that depends on what it is. What do you want me to do, Amano-san? Yuma giggles in the palm of her hand while her bangs were hiding her eyes. As she slowly removes her hand from her lips, a wide grin could be seen. Will you die for me? Issei blinks once at Yuma's request. Then twice. Then a third time. Can you repeat that, please? I don't think I've heard you right. Okay. She says with a sing-song voice before lifting her head up, revealing a sinister look in her eyes as her grin turned more ominous. I ask if you could die for me. Issei gasped at the malevolent tone she used in her voice. The way he heard it, it sounded like she really did want himself killed. But before he could question her further, a pair of black feathered wings sprouted from her back in the speed of a bullet. Once she grew those, her clothes began to tear themselves apart, exposing her bare breasts to a shell-shocked Issei, who quickly looked away as soon as she caught the sight of her pink nipples. While his gaze was averted, Yuma's appearance became more mature, and black leather straps wrapped itself around her body, creating an outfit that belongs to someone who's into S&M. When Issei turned his head back to Yuma, he releases another gasp when he saw not only how much her appearance has changed, but when he saw that she was now flying in the air with the help of her wings. I must admit, Issei Hyoudou, it's almost sad that I need to kill you. You do have a very pretty face with quite the pinchable cheeks. Issei couldn't think of anything to say. He couldn't say anything period, as he was still having a tough time comprehending what was happening right now. With a giggle, Yuma lifts her right hand up, and a pink light can be seen taking a shape above the palm. After the light grew long enough, it became what appeared to be a throwing spear, but was made entirely out of that light. But that's not to say I didn't have fun. On the contrary, it was a pleasant day you've given me. You have my gratitude. With an evil grin, Yuma takes aim with her spear and locks her eyes right onto Issei. Now then, please die for me, Issei Hyoudou. Just as he blinked, Yuma threw her light spear straight at Issei and landed a direct hit on his stomach. Blood spurted from behind his back as he got impaled, and because of the force of the spear, he was forced to fall to the ground on his back, making him spit up blood and bile from the impact. With another laugh, Yuma flew down towards the mortally wounded Issei and flashes him a smile. I really am sorry for this. Yuma says with a tone that almost sounded regretful, but it didn't. But since you were a big threat to us, I was left with no other choice. What? What is she talking about? Issei wondered mentally as his eyes grew heavy, being on the verge of losing consciousness, while his blood began to pool on the ground beneath him. With a wider grin, Yuma reaches a hand towards one of Issei's cheeks and gave it a hard pinch, making the young man flinch. If you want to blame someone, dear, then blame God for blessing you with a sacred gear. Sacred gear. Issei's mind was getting more and more drowsy after she lets go of his cheek. Well, that's how it is then. Yuma says with a shrug. Farewell, Issei Hyoudou. See you in the next life. Issei watches Yuma take off into the air, leaving behind a trail of black feathers. After she left, he weakly lifts his right hand up and sees that more of his blood got on it. So, this is how I die. Issei mused as a tear rolls down his cheek. And I had so much to do, too. I could have played guitar. Traveled. Or maybe see if dad can take me and mom out fishing again. More tears were now leaking from both of his eyes. And to make matters worse, I never got to tell Ryo-san how I felt about her. All because I was betrayed by someone I helped get around. With his breathing getting weaker, Issei's eyes slowly begin to close further. No matter how much strength he summons up, no matter how hard he tries to stop his stomach from bleeding, he knows that he's not going to make it. I'm sorry. Mom. Dad. Midnight. Ryo-san. I love you all. Issei then waits for his bleeding to take its toll, having accepted his fate, while the black feathers continue to fall near him. But then, time stopped. The feathers Yuma left behind stopped falling and froze into the air, with only a couple landing on the ground next to Issei, whose mortal time was also paused. And then, the Otsutuki God appears before Issei, staring at him with sympathy in his bright blue eyes and a frown. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? The Otsutuki God questions the boy as he floats towards him. I deeply apologize for not intervening and taking care of the fallen angel sooner, but doing so requires a much more heavy amount of power. power that will set off the devils who live in this town. To make up for my foolishness, I shall rewrite your fate." With his expression now stern, the Otsutuki God gently takes Issei's right hand into both of his own hands and squeezes it firmly. "Now then. Let's begin." "What the? Where am I?" With an expression of complete awe, Issei finds himself floating in what appeared to be a pitch-black void. He can see his own hands, feet and torso in front of himself, and he can think and speak as clear as day. So that brings to question. Is Issei in some kind of afterlife waiting to be judged? Was this also the place where other people go when they die? Could he find anyone else in this void that oddly enough doesn't feel like one to him? Issei didn't know. All he could do was wait for what he assumed would be a very long time, leaving him in the dark on what's going on. "Can you hear my voice, Issei Hyoudou?" "Huh?" Issei jumps in surprise as he heard a young man who sounded to be the age of his father talk to him. Upon turning around, his eyes got as wide as they could when he saw what looked to him to be a godlike being slowly floating towards him with closed eyes, crossed legs, and crossed arms. "Are you the keeper of this afterlife?" Issei questions the Otsutsuki God as he got closer and closer to the young boy. "My name is Denichi Otsutsuki, and I'm here to give you a second chance in life." "WH. What?" Issei was shocked by the god's introduction, but before he could question him on what he meant, Denichi grabs onto his left arm and observes it with his closed eyes. After taking his time, the god nods to himself while humming. "Now I see," the Otsutsuki God says. "This particular dragon-type sacred gear carries the soul of the Red Dragon Emperor. Yes. The Longinus boosted gear will be powerful enough." Issei didn't quite understand what Denichi was talking about, other than that he mentioned this sacred gear thing and something about a dragon. Issei then shivers a little when the Otsutsuki God sets his closed-eyed stare back onto him while he floated away from him. Hold on, Otsutsuki-sama." Issei finally speaks while being as respectful as he can to the godly being. "I still don't understand. Are you really giving me another chance in life? Why did Yuma kill me and grow wings? And what do you mean by my sacred gear, especially since Yuma mentioned it, too? And. Calm yourself, son of man." Issei did as he was told and took multiple breaths to calm himself down, allowing Denichi to speak next. "That person who murdered you is a creature called a fallen angel." Issei's brows rise at the information. "A fallen angel?" "Yes, that's right. And she wanted to kill you because your sacred gear is very powerful. Sacred gears are artifacts that have been bestowed upon certain humans by the biblical god. And you, Issei Hyoudou, are one of these humans. There are multiple sacred gears, and a rare few of them, one of which you carry, can even be strong enough to take on devils, angels, fallen angels, and other supernatural beings from many mythologies. You can even kill a god, since your sacred gear is a Longinus." Issei clutches his head with one hand while processing the knowledge the Otsutsuki God gave him with an appalled face. "Okay. So there is such thing as a Christian god and other beings based on that religion. And other beings from different mythologies exist too." Issei looks back up at Denichi. "But what does that have to do with you saying that you're giving me a second chance?" If there was ground in this void, Issei would have taken a step back as he watches the Otsutsuki God float closer to him again. "Issei Hyoudou, for the past 2 days, I have been watching over you ever since I've discovered that you have an extraordinarily powerful Longinus. And because of your kind heart, I've decided that you are worthy of your fate being rewritten from being wrongfully slain by the fallen angel." "Oh really?" Issei was going to say more, but he cut himself off when he saw that Denichi was now opening his eyes. As he got a look at them, his eyes contract when he saw the grey scleras and light bluer eyes and pupils that belonged to the god. He expected him to have such eyes, but because of how compelling they were, he was more shocked than he should be. "But, in return for your resurrection, you must be prepared for the supernatural and those who wish to hunt you, and defend yourself whenever you need to." Issei blinked in confusion, but before he could respond, Denichi was now much closer to him to where he could reach his arms towards him. "Pay close attention. Starting tonight, you must get accustomed to the supernatural world that has existed long under your nose until now. And as you get used to it, one day, there will be a great evil that only you can stop." Issei was stunned with what the Otsutsuki God just said. He couldn't think of anything to say. All he could do was think about what this godly entity was telling him. "And remember this," Denichi continued while grabbing onto Issei's right hand with his hand, while his other hand was on Issei's arm. "Once I've branded you with my power, you will cease to be an ordinary human being." Issei was now more puzzled than ever. "What exactly do you mean by that? And how do you expect me to take on this great evil? What even is it, anyway?" "I'm afraid we've run out of time to continue our talk, Issei Hyoudou," Denichi says regretfully as Issei begins to see him slowly fade away like steam. Well he was, the Otsutsuki God sets his eyes on Issei's right hand real quick and smiles to see that the process was a success before looking back at the still bewildered Issei. Until then, reflect well on thy fate. Bite down firmly onto it as you begin to live your new life. Remaining speechless and awestruck, Issei watches as Denichi Otsutsuki continued to fade away from the void. Before the last part of him became steam that passed through him, the brown-haired man heard his last words. "Oh, son of man." Back at the park, with stars among the night sky, Issei is still seen on the ground unconscious, with his blood still pooled below him. As he still lied there with closed eyes, the wound caused by Yuuma's spear of light was slowly closing with no sign of a scar developing as his stomach was healing itself. Now, the only proof there is of him being stabbed before was the hole in his shirt. While his stomach was healing, a blue aura can be seen leaking from the wounds before ceasing as they closed up. Then, Issei's fingers slowly curled as his eyes were fluttering awake. As soon as he made eye contact with the full moon, his eyes shot open with contracted irises and pupils. Gasp. Issei shoots his head off the ground as he finally regains consciousness. Hyperventilating, he then looks around himself to see if there was anyone else, and sure enough, he was the only one here. "I'm alive," Issei says to himself as he now understands that he was in the same place as where he was stabbed by Yuuma. So, the god actually did it. Wanting to check, Issei looks down at his stomach and much to his surprise, he saw that his stomach was as good as new. It looked as if he was never even stabbed. Although, his blood was still on his now ruined shirt. When he looked down on the ground he was laying on, he immediately leaped away from it and landed on his feet when he saw how much of his own blood was dried up. And there was a lot of it. My god. Issei shuddered as he placed his right hand in front of his mouth. It's a miracle that I'm still standing. Huh. Issei pauses his out loud musing when he notices something on the palm of his right hand. Removing it from his mouth, he puts the palm in front of himself to get a better look at it. Oh. Issei realizes. More of my dried up blood. After sucking on two of his fingers to get them wet, Issei drags them across his hand to clean the blood off of it. As soon as he got it off, Issei's brows raised when he saw something else. On his hand, Issei saw a small black four-sided diamond tattooed on the middle of his palm. What the? When did that get here? Issei continued to stare at his newly acquired mark. He may have remembered all the other crazy stuff that happened, like Yuuma killing him because of his sacred gear, and when he met a godly being named Denichi Otsutsuki in a void-like afterlife, but he never recalled in any of those events where and when he got a tattoo on his palm. Wanting to check if it's real or fake, Issei wets his two fingers again and scrubs them onto the mark as hard as he could. Seconds later, he saw that the 4-point diamond didn't lose its shape or form. This made Issei squint his eyes at the mark for another moment, making him more curious about where it came from. But before he could think about it more, Issei's eyes widen when he realizes how dark it is at night. Wait. What time is it now? Issei quickly stuffs his hand into the pocket where he carried his phone and takes it out. With a press of a button, the screen turns on and reveals that the time was now 10 p.m., a time where he should be in bed for school tomorrow. Oh no. Mom. Dad. Without hesitation, Issei broke into a sprint and headed straight for home. While Issei wasn't aware of two things. 1. Issei's speed when running was faster than when he would normally run. And 2. While he was running, the leaflet that the brown-haired woman from earlier gave him has fallen from his pocket during the time he pulled out his phone. Next to the dried-up pool of blood, the circle on the leaflet started to glow bright red and create a much larger red circle on the ground. The circle glowed a brighter red on the ground, and as it did, a matching colored silhouette of a woman appears from the circle. Once the light started to vanish, a familiar redheaded third-year student from Kuo Academy can be seen at the park with the circle disappearing from below her feet. So, you're the one that called out to me? Bria's Gremory spoke while being under the impression that she was addressing to Issei, only to discover that while she was talking, Issei was nowhere to be found. Muddled, she searched around the park to try and find where her cowhide is. As she gasps with widened eyes when she spots a large splash of dried-up blood next to her on the ground. Wanting to investigate, she knelt down towards the blood and observes it closely. The flyer my familiar gave to Ice should have opened a transportation circle to him when he was injured very badly. As she kept pondering, her eyes slowly contract as another thought popped into her head. Unless the blood belongs to. Slowly getting up, Ria's hands shake as she puts the pieces together, with the bangs of her hair blocking her eyes, but her frown being very visible. To think that she'd go this far. Under the belief that Issei Hyoudou has been brutally killed, Ria sighs a breath of disappointment in herself that she didn't do better with keeping a watchful eye on him. She was even disappointed that she allowed the possibility of the fallen angel, who hunted Issei, being very strong because of what happened to Kaneko last time. Well, I better call Sona and tell her what happened and get help on cleaning this up. But that said, a red transportation appears beneath Ria's feet in a rotating motion and glows red, teleporting her back her base. Back with Issei, he finally made it back home while being slightly out of breath. Quickly, he speed walked towards the front door and knocked on it twice, not bothering to remember that he still had his house key with him because of the flood of questions on what happened back at the park still being in his head. While he was waiting for his mom or dad to answer the door, a thought came across his mind that made him froze in place with a look of cognizance before slowly tilting his head downwards at his own torso. Wait. How am I going to explain how I got my blood on my torn up shirt? With that in mind, Issei moves his hands to the bottom of his shirt. But before he could take it off, Issei's movements were halted again when he heard the door open faster than he nor his parents would usually open it for a guest or when one of them enters or leaves home. Issei. Huh? Issei blinks once when he heard his mother squeak out his name and sets his stare back up, only for his eyes to widen at the sight of a worried Mickey, whose eyes have tears threatening to leak from them. Mom. His eyes then turn wide as he looks from his mom to his shirt 3 times before sticking his hands up in defense. Hold on. I can explain. Oh, Issei. Issei was suddenly trapped in a tight hug by a crying Mickey with his head slamming into her bosom, making him go MMF. As soon as her hand shoved his head there. My baby. Your dad and I were so worried about you. Where were you, Issei? We were about to call the police to search for you. MMF. With tears rolling down her cheeks, Mickey looks down at her son to see that he was tapping her shoulder while pointing at his own head, making her realize how she was hugging him and immediately releases him, allowing Issei to recover his air supply. Sorry, sweetie. Mickey says before releasing a hiccup and wiping away her tears while letting Issei in the house. You've been gone for hours, and… She pauses when she notices the tear on Issei's shirt. When she saw that along with some of the blood that stained it, her face turned pale. Issei. Did you? Issei pales up too, afraid that his mother's got the wrong idea. No, Mom. I swear, I didn't do what you think I. Did you get attacked, Issei? Issei blinks in surprise when she finished her question. He thought for sure that she was going to think that he got into a fight that ended terribly, but instead, she was under the impression that her son was attacked by someone with a bladed weapon. Well, she wasn't wrong that he was attacked, but the thing is, Issei was supposed to die by the wound he suffered, which was nowhere to be found after he was resurrected by the Otsutuki God, something that Issei was still puzzled on. Well. Issei was hesitant on answering her, but before he could say anything, Mickey immediately got closer to get a better look at where Issei was stabbed. Oh God. Are you alright? Is the cut fatal? Did you get a good look at who it was that hurt you? Did you call the police? Issei was bombarded with question after question relating to the blood and tear on his shirt. He still wasn't sure if he should tell the whole story or not because he knew that if he told them that the woman he helped get around town grew a pair of wings and killed him with a spear made of light from thin air, he didn't think she'd believe him. Heck, he wasn't sure if she'd believe anything else that has happened to him that followed the stabbing. Honey, what's wrong? I heard you shouting and… Issei and Mickey turned their heads to see that Goro was in the room with them. As soon as his eyes were set on Issei, his reaction was just about the same as Mickey's, starting with him hugging his son tighter than Mickey did. Issei. Where the hell were you? Your mother and I were worried sick. Me dad. You're gonna impale my lungs with my own ribs. Goro didn't listen. He was too busy asking him the exact same questions Issei's mom asked him before. Goro-kun, stop. Mickey shouts while placing her hands on her husband's shoulders. Issei's been attacked by a hooligan. Goro's expression turns to shock and immediately releases Issei, who rubbed a hand onto his ribs due to how tight his father's hug was. Holy crap. Goro exclaims as he looks at the bloodstained shirt's tear. It's a miracle you survived and came all the way back home to us while you're still standing. Who did this to you, son? Issei turns his eyes to the left while he poked his index fingers together. I didn't get attacked. I just got into an accident that cut me through the shirt. The wound would have been fatal if I wasn't more careful. So. Yeah. Issei hated to lie to his parents, he really did, but how would they believe him if he told them that a woman with black wings, who was able to fly, was the one responsible for the stabbing? It would sound like crazy talk to them. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Mickey says with a sorrow face, surprising Issei a little that she accepted it just like that. But then, the sound of the hiatus's home phone ringing got him and his parents to snap towards it. I'll go answer it. Goro announces to the two before heading towards the phone to do just that. As he was, Issei sighs a breath to himself while placing his right hand on his forehead. Man. This whole thing even got my parents worried. He thought before he slowly brought the palm of his hand in front of himself to get another look at his new diamond mark. And now I have the supernatural to worry about, according to that god I met said. So Issei, did you eat while you were out? Issei blinked rapidly while quickly balling his right hand into a fist when he heard his mother and turned his head towards her to answer. Yes, I have. So you don't need to make me anything tonight. It's too late for that. I'm just going to take a shower and sleep it off for the rest of the night. Okay. If you're sure. Just make sure to hand me your shirt when you're done. I might be able to patch it up. Issei gives his mom a grateful smile. Thank you. After she smiled back, Issei walked his way towards the stairs while beginning to remove his shirt. As he almost got on top, he heard his father, Goru, raise his voice in what sounded to Issei like confusion. What? What are you talking about? My son is alive and well. He's even in our house as we speak. Issei froze with contracted eyes when he heard those words. Wait. What? Yes, that's correct. Goru continued. You see, before Issei came back home, my wife discovered that he was cut in the stomach from an accident. Thankfully, it wasn't too deep when we got a look at it. Issei heard his father's voice get more audible as he listened to his phone call, revealing that Goru was walking towards Issei while he was talking. Once he got to the stairs, Goru looks up at Issei. Here, one moment. Issei, talk in the phone right quick so the school board can hear you. Issei's brows raise when Goru presents the phone to him. Swallowing a lump, Issei walked to his father and did as requested. Hello. Goru nods to his son before turning around and returning to where he came from. See? My son is alive. I don't know who told you that he's died, but you ought to do something about that. As Goru continued talking to the school board on the phone, Issei was appalled by the new discovery on what the phone call was about. Guo Academy thought I died. What the hell? Blinking rapidly, Issei slowly turns back around and heads toward the bathroom while his mind was stuck in what's going on. As Issei was washing himself and his hair in the shower, Issei continued to think about his father's phone call. Just what is happening right now? He wondered aloud. First, a mono-sense stabs me with a magic spear, then a godly being rescues me from death, and now this. Issei frowned in remembrance of those events. Every second he thought about them, he became more frustrated than ever. In fact, he didn't know which was crazier anymore, the fact that the supernatural exists and he survived a stabbing from what the Otsutuki God called a fallen angel, or the fact that the school board thought that he died for some odd reason. While he thought it was insane that religious beings of Christianity and possibly other mythologies exist, the fact that the school thought that he was killed was what surprisingly chilled him the most. Just where exactly did they get such an idea that he was murdered? The only reasonable solution to that question was if someone from his school witnessed the stabbing, and that was unlikely, because not only does anyone rarely come to the park at night, but if anyone did see it, they would have a hard time explaining it for the same reasons Issei couldn't tell his parents on what's really going on. And despite that, none of it was more confusing than the Otsutuki God's final message to him when he was in that void-like afterlife. You must get accustomed to the supernatural world that has existed long under your nose until now. And as you get used to it, one day, there will be a great evil that only you can stop. Issei looked down on the shower floor while rinsing his hair from the shampoo and the soap from his body. The great evil that only I can stop. Just what was that godly being talking about? That was another thing Issei didn't quite understand. From how he remembered it, Dinichi Otsutsuki was speaking as if he was some kind of chosen one, a person who is strong enough to face this danger he spoke of when the time comes. And that was a position the young man was unsure about taking, especially since he still has yet to see what other kinds of supernatural and mythologies exist. Issei? The young man's eyes broadened when he heard his mother from the other side of the shower door. Mother? I came to check on you. Are you doing okay in there? Yeah, I'm fine, Mom. Issei answers while turning off the water. He then grabs onto a towel and starts to dry himself off. Are you sure? What happened to you before had to have kept you unsettled, hasn't it? I'm okay, Mom. Really? Issei assures her, not wanting Miki to worry more than she already is. After drying himself off, Issei wraps his towel around his waist and began to make his way out of the bathroom. When he got out, he handed his mother his ruined shirt as she told him to. Issei nods to Miki and thanks before beginning to go towards his room. But before he could take another step, his mother embraced him from behind, catching him off guard. Mother. I'm glad you're okay, Issei. Miki says bluntly. I just want you to know that, okay? I really did expect the worst when you were gone for so long. Issei's eyes soften towards his mom as she releases him. Of course, Mom. He replies with a smile. And thanks again for taking your time into fixing my shirt. You're welcome, dear. Now go ahead and get some rest. After nodding, Issei continues to walk towards his room with his mother watching him. After seeing him enter his room, Miki looks down at the hole in his shirt, continuing to be thankful that her son is still alive. As he closed his bedroom door behind him, Issei looked around and saw that his cat, Midnight, was nowhere to be found, which was rare because she'd always wait for him to return home on top of his bed. I guess she went to sleep somewhere else. Brushing some bangs of his hair, Issei dropped his towel and collected a black pair of boxer shorts. As he was getting them on, Issei looked at the mirror with the corner of his eye and noticed something. Turning his head towards it so he can get a better look, Issei's eyes broadened when he saw that his body looked different. Wanting a closer look, Issei walked closer to his mirror and made a pose to make out some differences. Looking at his reflection up and down, his eyes widened in shock when he saw that his body was a little bit more muscular than he thought it was. He would usually exercise once in a while, especially since he also has gym classes, but he knew that the number of classes he took there, as well as those home exercises that help him do better at gym, wouldn't result in him into having his body this well toned. His body magically improved everywhere. His biceps and abdominal muscles became greatly developed, and he even has a six-pack. It wasn't the most amazing six-pack ever, but it was there, and it has a reasonable tone as well. Well, at least I don't look like a muscle freak. Issei continued to observe himself for a little longer, his expression still in awe at how strong his body has suddenly become. As he was, his eyes stop at his right hand, which has its palm facing the mirror. And on that palm, the black diamond mark can still be seen there, the very mark that made Issei stop and stare at it from the mirror. And remember this. Once I've branded you with my power, you will cease to be an ordinary human being. Issei blinked in surprise when he suddenly remembered what Danichi told him in the dark void. He didn't know why looking at his mark triggered that memory, but it did. He then gets his right hand's palm to face himself so he can take another look at the mark. As he did, the questions he had about it return. Just where exactly did it come from? He knew for sure that he never bothered to get a tattoo while escorting his killer around the town. The only time it appeared was after he was brought back by the Otsutuki God. So maybe that was what Danichi meant by branding him his power. Maybe the god gave him that mark to revive him. Issei could feel his mind hurting a little as he puzzled on the mark further and shook his head. I'll worry about it later, he says as he picks up his towel to store in the hamper. Right now, I got a biology test tomorrow. That's more important for now. Minutes later, Issei is now asleep in his bed. After he put his towel in the hamper, he went to sleep right away, so his mind can be the best it could after a long stressful day. His thoughts on the supernatural and the other crazy scenarios can wait. It's his biology test in the morning that's important to him right now. But as he was sleeping, his bedroom's window made a clicking noise and began to open slowly. Whoever was opening it, they were doing their very best to be as quiet as possible. Once the window was opened wide enough, a head slowly popped out from there and turned their head left and right twice, checking the room to see if the coast was clear. After nodding, the figure began to climb through the window and carefully landed on the floor with their bare feet while carrying their pair of black flip-flops in their hand. After closing the window behind them and locking it, the figure is revealed to be a silhouette of a woman with a voluptuous figure. The only visible parts of her body right now in the dark are her hazel gold eyes, which went over to Issei as she hid her shoes in the deepest area of Issei's closet. The female figure's eyes softened towards the boy as she tiptoed her way towards his bed. From behind the silhouette, two tail-like appendages are slowly swaying as she stealthily climbed into bed from behind Issei. Once she got comfortable, the woman scooted closer to him and presses her large bust against the back of his head, spooning Issei in the process. As she was cuddling him tenderly, the woman looks over to Issei's right hand's palm and squints at the 4-point diamond mark. She has witnessed everything that has happened to Issei that night. From him turning a fallen angel without him realizing it, to being slain by the fallen angel, and then, to the woman's shock, Issei coming back unscathed. While his sudden recovery took her back, what surprised the silhouette the most was how much more power she was now feeling from the boy, now that she's gotten closer to him. This wasn't just the source of his sacred gear, something she discovered very earlier on, but there was something else within him. And for some reason, that power she was now feeling was coming from the mark on Issei's palm. The silhouette shakes her head a few times, deciding to worry about it later, and rested her head onto Issei's. All that mattered to her now was that he was safe. As the next day began, Issei's eyes slowly open as he awakens from his slumber. After lifting his head from his pillow, he stretches his arms upwards as he released an audible yawn. While he was doing so, he noticed something from the left corner of his eye. Turning his head in that direction for a better look, his eyebrows raised when he saw that it was his cat, Midnight, sleeping right beside him with her front paws touching him. That's rare of her to sleep beside me. She mostly sleeps on my lap. Issei removes the covers off of himself without disturbing Midnight and sits up on the side of his bed, thinking that his door was cracked, which allowed the cat to enter his room while he was sleeping. Once he stood up, Issei blinks in confusion when he noticed that he hadn't felt tired at all. Despite all that has happened and that he came home a little late last night, he still felt well rested. Issei then brings his arms in front of himself. As he did, he began to slowly move his hands around in a circular motion. Crazy? He whispers with wide eyes of shock. Even if I went to bed in time, I would always still be a little tired. But today, I feel great, wide awake. Heck, I even feel more awake than I normally would. Issei, breakfast is ready. Issei turns his head towards his bedroom door when he heard his mother call out to him. I'll be right there, Mom. Deciding to keep this phenomenon in the back burner, Issei gets dressed in his school uniform and walks out of the room to brush his teeth in the bathroom. After performing his dental care, Issei is now seated with his parents having eggs and bacon for breakfast. At first, the young man was thinking about what's happened, but he then sets his thoughts on his studies. His biology test is today. That comes first before he can fully focus on last night. So, Issei, were you able to sleep okay? Issei nods at his mother, who sat across from him next to his father. I have. Surprisingly enough, despite coming home late, I was able to sleep properly. That's good to hear, Issei. Miki smiles at her son before getting up from the table, having finished her breakfast before Issei and Goru. As she was going to discard her dish in the sink, her foot got caught on the table's leg and tripped over it. Hi. Miki-chan. Goru shouts to his wife as she was about to fall to the ground, with the plate breaking to pieces. But before either of those could happen, Miki gasps when she felt someone quickly swing an arm around her waist while using his other arm to catch the plate before it could break. After gasping a few breaths, Miki, followed by Goru, looked to see that it was Issei that saved her from hurting herself. Whoa. Nice reflexes, son. Goru compliments his son while sighing a breath, relieved that his wife is okay. Issei, however, wore a face of surprise while looking down at his arms. While he was glad that he was able to keep her from falling, it's how he got there that bewildered him. What? Was I always this fast? Issei? The brown-haired man blinks when he heard his mother say his name and looked at her. You okay, Mom? That would have been bad if the plate got destroyed first before you fell. Miki nods with a small smile while her son released her from his one-armed grasp. Yes, thank you, Issei. Miki then giggles while gently punching his left shoulder before taking the plate back. Looks like those gym classes are finally paying off, huh? You got here quick. Sure. Issei scratches the back of his head before continuing to finish his breakfast. After finishing, he went ahead to take his dish to the sink. As he continued to think about how quick he was to catch his mom from getting in an accident. I know the gym classes are helping me get in shape, but there's no way that it would make me this fast, especially since Mom was at the opposite end of the table. With a sigh, Issei shakes his head at the thought and walks towards the front door. Well, I'm off. He notifies his parents while getting his shoes on. Have a good day, Issei. Goru says with a smile and a wave. And be careful out there. Miki adds with a hand over her heart. Issei nods at his parents with a smile before turning back around to the front door to open it. As he got his hand on the knob, he frowned while looking downwards. Man. Heading back to school after Dad cleared up the misunderstandings with the staff is going to be very awkward. Quietly breathing through his nose, Issei opens the door and walks out of the house. After closing it behind himself, he begins to walk his way to school, hoping that he's studied enough to get at least a good score on his biology test. But little did he know, his new life after being revived by Denichi Otsutsuki has just begun. When we last left off, Issei was resurrected by Denichi Otsutsuki, leaving him with a healed stab wound with no scar, a black diamond mark on his right hand's palm, and tons of questions about what is going on in the supernatural in general. How will Issei's day go after being brought back to life by God? Find out now. Issei was currently walking his way towards school after having finished his breakfast a few minutes ago. While his studies for today's biology test were on his mind so he can do well, some thoughts about last night managed to slip in his head as well. In fact, it was yesterday that made the brown-haired boy a little nervous about coming back to school. But nonetheless, Issei continued to put last night's events in the back burner, as he'll have plenty of time to think about it once he finishes his biology test. As he finally made it to the school, Issei took a quiet but deep breath, ready to get through the day. When he went through the gates, he got the greetings he would expect from some girls and a rare few boys who aren't jealous of his popularity with the former gender. Naturally, he greeted them back and continued walking until he reached the doors that lead to the entrance of Kuo Academy. When he entered the school building, all looked normal. Issei saw that some students were walking to their own classes, talking with one another, and overall, having a good time. This made sense to Issei, as the talk his father had with the school board was private and wouldn't be announced to the school because, well, Issei hasn't died. Issei breathes another thankful sigh while brushing some strands of his hair and continued moving forward. Well, today's another day. As he took his fifth step, Issei suddenly felt a shivering sensation that traveled down his right arm to his hand that made him pause with wide eyes. He lifts his arm up towards himself and sees that it was slightly shaking. Why it was, he didn't know. While he kept looking at his arm, his eyes trace upwards towards his palm, where the black 4-point diamond resides, and saw that his hand was surprisingly shaking a bit more vigorously than his arm. As the shaking of his arm kept going, Issei then looked forward, as if his instincts told him to while gripping onto his wrist. After he did, he darts his eyes around his surroundings with this odd feeling developing within him. He didn't know why, but it felt to him as if his body, or more specifically his arm, was telling him to tread carefully. It was as if he was being warned that someone that isn't normal is in this school. What is this feeling? Issei questions as his grip on his right arm's wrist tightens. Why do I feel as if I need to keep my guard up? Issei-kun. Are you alright? Hey. Issei jumped when he heard a gentle female voice speak to him. With rapid breaths, he looks to see a busty third-year girl with blue eyes and long brown hair, arranged in multiple drill-like curls, appearing to be a little worried for him after he yelped when she got his attention. Issei recognized this girl as Kiyomabe. He mostly knew her as the captain of the Kuo Academy's tennis club. He got a glimpse of her playing a few matches of the game with some students, but never fully invested in it since he was never really into sports. But other than that, the two are on friendly terms and would sometimes converse once in a while due to how busy she is as a captain. Sorry, Abe-senpai. He says while scratching the back of his head sheepishly. I was just caught up in my own thoughts so much that I stopped moving. Are you sure? Kiyom asks before taking a step closer to him with her arms behind her back. You looked a little pale earlier. Issei shifts his eyes away from Kiyom while tapping his foot nervously. Let's just say that yesterday was a rough day. Kiyom gasps with a hand over her chest. Oh gosh. I hope it wasn't anything terrible. No. Nothing like you're thinking. Issei assures her with his hands in front of himself, not realizing that he's exposing his black mark to her. I was just studying very hard for a test I have today to the point where I almost gave myself a headache and I'm a little nervous about how I'll perform when that time comes. Which is after homeroom. Kiyom makes hums in understanding while nodding her head. I see. She then offers Issei a smile while stepping a little closer to him. But I wouldn't think about the worst too much since it may dampen your confidence, but knowing you, I'm sure you'll do swell. So think positive. Issei laughs sheepishly with closed eyes, thankful for his senpai's kind words. I appreciate your encouragement, Abe-senpai. Kiyom giggles while placing a hand on his shoulder, catching him off guard. Silly Issei-kun, didn't I tell you to call me by my first name? Issei blushed at the cutesy voice Kiyom used while she was leaning her face closer to Issei's own, making him lean his head away from her. Sorry. We've rarely talked since you're so busy with tennis. And with how busy I am myself, I keep forgetting. If you foo, it's okay. Kiyom says before her smile widens, taking in how cute she found her cowhide when he had a bashful face. I'll forgive you if you answer one question for me. And? That is? Are you thinking about joining a club? Issei did a double take at Kiyom's question. He honestly expected her to request something to do with himself, like letting her pinch his cheeks for however long she would want to do it, because he knows that Kiyom, like most girls in school, finds his face to be the most adorable thing they've seen. Heck, Kiyom straight up called him and his face cute when they first got acquainted. No, it never crossed my mind. Why? Even though he asked, he's got a pretty good idea why she quizzed him on the subject. Well, since you're wondering, I've had a talk with some of my friends who are also in the tennis club with me. Before continuing, Kiyom booped Issei on the nose, earning a light gasp from him. And they've asked me to see if I could get you to join our club. Why am I not surprised? Issei wonders mentally with a deadpan before answering. Sorry, I'm flattered by the offer, but since I'm not that much of a sports guy, I have to decline. Aw. Won't you at least consider? Kiyom asks with soft eyes before grabbing onto Issei's right hand with both of hers, making his eyes turn wide at the soft touch. I'll teach you everything I know to help you become a great player. Issei's blush turns a darker red when Kiyom stroked his hand with her fingers. Her smile grows as she gently opens its fingers, revealing the black diamond for her to see as she traces a circle on the palm with her pointer finger. I really don't know. I mean, I'm also very busy with other stuff, so how could I find time to join any club? Kiyom giggled and gave Issei's hand one more brush before releasing it. She then looks back at Issei with a blush on her cheeks. It's alright, Issei-kun. I won't force you to do what you don't want to do. Issei sighs a breath of relief, being very thankful for Kiyom's understanding. Brushing her bangs, Kiyom turns around to walk to her own destination, while her head still faced Issei. But if you change your mind, do let me know. I'll always welcome you with open arms. Kiyoom then winks at Issei before walking away. As she was, Issei's cheeks flushed when he saw that her hips were swaying side to side as she moved. Shaking his head from any perverted thoughts, Issei turned around with his serious face on and began to march his way to his classroom. Oh. One more thing. Issei turned his head around to see Kiyoom looking at him again with a smile. I like your tattoo. Huh? Issei looked towards where Kiyoom's finger was pointing. As he did, his eyes contract when he realized that she was talking about the mark on his palm. He shot his head back up to Kiyoom, only to see that she already left. He blinks twice at the spot she was once at before sighing to himself. Damn it. Why was I worried when she talked about that mark? I mean, she only complimented it. He then deadpans. Besides, what's so suspicious about a common shape for a tattoo? Shaking his head, Issei continued his walk towards his class. Well he then notices something and lifts his right hand's palm back up towards himself. Not to look at the tattoo, but at his hand in general. The strange feeling from earlier is gone. Issei thought as his stare never left his hand. A while ago, before Kiyoom started talking to him, his arm was shaking as if it was trying to warn him about something. But now, it feels fine, as if his arm went back to normal. Just what is going on with me today? He would question it further, but he still has his test to prepare for. And with that in mind, Issei continued to tread forward, wanting to get it over with. But unbeknownst to the young man, he was being watched by a familiar white-haired loli, who's considered as Kuo Academy's mascot by most of her fans. She kept her stare on him until he was no longer in sight and began to walk back to her own class while thinking about the events that she and her group have learned about last night. After homeroom finished, Issei's biology class has finally begun. And as everyone got settled, their teacher came in and peered at his students. Alright class, I will be handing out your tests. I hope you all have come prepared. Some students moaned in frustration, while some were ready to get the test done. Issei was the most prepared, and as soon as his copy of the test was given, he puts his name on where to add it and got to work without hesitation. During the test, Issei tapped into the memory banks of his studies and answered the questions the best he could. With question after question, he thought as hard as he could as he selected what he believes were the right answers based on his study sessions. As he was working, Issei answered 2 more questions before seeing that he has just reached the bottom of his paper. There were no more questions to be answered beyond this point. Issei rose a brow. He didn't think that he'd already been on the final question of the test in 2 minutes. Under the assumption that he might have skipped a few, Issei quietly checked on the rest of his questions without causing any disruptions to his classmates. As he was, his eyes nearly bulged from his sockets when he looked his paper up and down. Every single question that was on the test is already answered and ready to be turned in when the time comes for it. Wait, what? How did I finish this so fast? I thought for sure I took my time and went slow with every question. Gently putting his pencil down without showing his shock to his teacher, Issei looked over his test with just his eyes to check on his answers. He made sure to be very thorough with his double checking. And much to his surprise, all of the questions answered on his sheet were correct. Or at least they look and felt right to him, since he's going off with the memories of what he studied at home. He kept double checking every single question over and over again, and with every reread, his mind still believes that he chose the correct answers. Unbelievable. I never finish any assignment this quick. It felt like I took my time, and yet it was done in nearly a blink of an eye. Issei's eyes slowly go towards his right hand without flipping his palm towards himself. And without squinting them, they solely focus on the black mark. Could this phenomenon relate to back when I saved mom from falling and the feeling in my arm? I don't get it. Issei is now trying his very best to remain calm. Since he apparently finished his test early, his mind, without him even realizing it, went back to what happened to him last night. From the Yuma girl turning into a fallen angel and stabbing him, to a god who calls himself Denichi Otsutsuki bringing him back after explaining everything to him. And all of those thoughts are keeping Issei's eyes on the black tattoo that appeared on his palm as soon as he awoken from his supposed death. It kept him wondering if there's still more to it because of its sudden appearance. And now that it's confirmed to him that the supernatural exists, how will he carry on with his life? All through the testing time, Issei continued to stare at his mark in deep thought until the teacher announced that time was up and that the students need to turn in their tests, snapping Issei out of his trance. Breathing through his nose, he followed his students to do just that and sits back down on his desk. After adjusting himself in his seat, Issei lifts his right palm back to him so he can peer at his mark again until he receives more instructions from his teacher. One more class and a lunch break later, Issei was now in his gym uniform as his gym class has now begun outside, behind the school. While waiting for the gym teacher's instructions for starting, he was staring at his diamond mark with narrowed eyes and a frown. It was the only thing Issei would ever do after taking care of other school-related things. And with Rhea not available to eat lunch with during lunch break, assuming that it's because of her duties at the student council, yesterday's events was all he could think about, as well as his tattoo that came after. He continued to ponder and puzzle about what will be next for him. He also didn't forget about what he pulled off at the kitchen before he had to go to school. He was still in disbelief that he would be as fast as he was back there to save his mother from falling over. And he sure as heck didn't forget about his right arm shivering back when he entered the school building. In fact, the spasm, accompanied by the odd feeling he felt too, came back to him for a minute during lunch after he finished eating his meal. After that minute passed, his arm and senses were back to normal. I wonder how many times I'll get these weird feelings. Issei wondered with a sigh before hearing a whistle, making him shoot his face from his marked palm to his gym teacher, who's blonde and strong for her feminine build. Alright, listen up. Today, y'all will be starting off running some laps, so get moving, on the double. Yes ma'am. The students got to their starting spots began to jog. Issei began to run too. As he focused his mind on keeping a decent pace with his classmates, once again putting his thoughts about yesterday in the back burner, not wanting them to slow him down. But unbeknownst to the boy, his speed began to slowly pick up. With every 3 seconds that pass, Issei ran faster and faster. He didn't even seem to look like he was about to run low on stamina with how fast he's going. The other students didn't notice how quick Issei was going until he ran past a few of them. And once they got a look at him, their eyes widened as they saw the rare-to-be-seen serious expression on the brown-haired man's face as he picked up his pace. Issei didn't pay attention to the reactions of the students he ran past. He was more focused on jogging, even though in actuality, he was sprinting with no trouble. Whoa. Issei thought to himself as his face slowly turned to bewilderment. Everything feels so clear. As he kept running, Issei continued to feel calmer and more focused as he continued running, resulting in him getting in front of everyone except for one student who was equally as fast as him. Hot damn. The coach exclaimed mentally as her shocked eyes were on Issei. The kid would usually be in 4th or 5th of the students in lap running. He must have worked hard at home to improve this much. The gym teacher continued to watch Issei with an impressed expression as the students continued running for 10 more laps. After seeing that they've done just that, she blew her whistle, signaling them to stop. While most of the students halted normally, when Issei heard the whistle, he snapped out of his concentration and was about to trip over his own. It took him 5 seconds to regain his balance. Once he did, he began breathing a little because of how much he's running. Hey, man, that was a great run. A male student said to him as he jogged towards him. You were flying ahead of most of us back there too. You must have trained hard. Hey? Issei gained a confused expression. I didn't think I was going that fast. Of course you were, dude. His classmate confirmed. You nearly got first place, even though this wasn't really a race. Yeah. A female student added as she walked up to Issei with a smile and pink cheeks. You've really improved from your first week here. I could almost picture you as the Flash. Issei's eyes widened as more of his classmates agreed with the 2 students who complimented him. Most were very amazed by his speed, while a rare few, like the perverted duo, grew a little more envious of the boy. It was only until they mentioned his speed that Issei shifted his eyes downwards in even more perplexity than ever before they went to his right hand's palm. It can't be. Did I seriously go as fast as they're claiming? Issei's right hand clenches into a fist. If what they're saying is true, does this relate to how quick I was to stop mom from falling? And should I be needing to breathe a lot after running this much? Boy. We got more things to do, so quit lollygagging and get a move on. The students moved along for the next gym activity, leaving Issei to continue musing about his speed while staring at his black mark with a thoughtful look on his face. The coach noticed his squinting expression and approached him with a cocked brow. Hey, kid, let's go. We don't want to waste any more time. Issei shot his head upwards and quickly turned to his coach, making her eyes slightly broaden at how fast his head went. Alright. Sorry ma'am. Meanwhile, Jinshiro can be seen with another member of the student council outside with him named Tsubasa Yura. She is a tall girl with blue shoulder-length hair with eyes a darker blue. Because of her Bishonen face and her overall appearance, most people would see her as a tomboy. The 2 second-year students were assigned by their coach a duty of helping Class 2B's gym teacher to prepare for more activities, one of which was setting up the balls for dodgeball. While they were doing their jobs, Jinshiro couldn't help but continue to think about the conversation between his Kaichu and her friend about what happened. And since it was about his friend, Issei, his frown remained plastered on his face as he recalled the gory details the 2 third-years discussed. The only thing he was thankful about was that he later learned that Issei was still okay. But even then, his gut was telling him that his friend might have unknowingly got himself involved with the supernatural world. Hey Saji. Inshiro was snapped out of his thoughts when he heard Tsubasa call out to him and looks at her. Oh. Sorry, Yura-san, got lost in my thoughts for a moment. You sure, dude? Tsubasa asks with a cocked brow. This wasn't the first time you had that kind of face. Inshiro blinks a few times at her council partner before shaking his head. Yeah. I'm sure. The blonde man stretches before taking a glance at the dodgeballs. Anyway, is that all of them? Should be. Tsubasa said with a nod. We should head back and notify our coach that it's done. With a nod back, Jinshiro starts to follow Tsubasa after dusting his hands. Along the way, the two caught sight of Issei. And upon further inspection, Jinshiro and Tsubasa saw that Issei was just standing there peering deeply at his right hand's palm. While Tsubasa kept moving with her eye on Issei, Jinshiro stopped and sets his stare on him. Upon further inspection, he saw that Issei's expression was that of confusion and worry, and the frown on his face with his furrowed brows told Saji that something must have happened. What it was, he doesn't know. Saji, let's go. Inshiro turned his head towards his fellow council member and catches up to her. As soon as he kept his pace with her, he took one last look at his friend and softens his eyes towards him, hoping that he's doing okay. Back with Issei, his narrowed eyes never left his black mark as his thoughts continued to linger on how fast most of his classmates claimed that he was sprinting. The same could be said for those other moments that made him go back to looking at the mysterious tattoo. Haidu. Issei balls his right hand into a fist to hide his mark when he heard two familiar voices shouting at him. Upon turning his head to the source, his eyes widened to see the perverted duo close to him, making him jump back from them. Why you guys again, what is it now? You were never this fast before. Motohama yells while pushing his glasses up while pointing a finger at him animatically with wide eyes. You've got another secret in your belt, don't you? What? No. I just exercise regularly at home too, and not just in gym class. Your accusation is absurd. What kind of routine do you take then? Mitsuda asks with desperation written on his face. How many push-ups do you do? How many sit-ups? What kind of juice do you drink? Issei gives them a weirded out stare with contracted eyes. Okay, this is getting silly. Why the heck are you two becoming so obsessed with my life? After a split second, Issei blinks and deadpans to himself after he realizes who he's talking to. Actually, on second thought, don't answer that. I've already figured it out. Please tell us. Mitsuda asks as he gets on his knees with his hands together and a pleading expression, with his glasses wearing friend following after. If you do, you'll be greatly rewarded. Issei shivered with furrowed brows and wide eyes, knowing what they do during their free time, thanks to Kadis and Murayama. I don't think I'd want to. But you must. Motohama snapped with tears streaming like a waterfall. Perhaps if we follow your routine, then maybe we can obtain the same luck with chicks as you. Bonk. Bonk. Will you pervs beat it? You two never learn, do you? Issei's eyes widen when he sees the perverted duo suddenly get punched and kicked away from him by two familiar girls who go to his class. Hada-san. Murayama-san. After dusting their hands while watching the two perverts crash onto the ground in scorpion positions, the girls turn towards Issei and smile kindly to him. Sorry about those, too, Issei-kun. Yeah, those jerks don't know when to quit. Issei chuckles with a sweat drop while scratching the back of his head. It's fine. It's not really that big of a deal, honestly. But it is. Kadis exclaims while zipping to his left side and wrapping her arms around his own, catching him off guard. Those two will take any chance they get to corrupt you into a perverted deviant. She's right. Murayama adds while grabbing hold of his other arm, making Issei's blush turn a darker red. We can't let them keep harassing you like this. No good will come out of it. Issei stutters as his eyes shift between the smiling girls. Hey. Why are you two holding on to me like that? Because we're about to play dodgeball, and we want you on our team. Eh? As Issei heard Kadis's explanation, a few more girls started to approach Issei. Hold on. We want him on our team. Yeah? Don't hog Issei to yourselves. I want him on my team. No, he should be on mine. As the girls continued to argue about whose team Issei should be on, some boys arrived and started giving mixed responses. Some want to be on the team Issei would be in, and some want to be on the team opposing Issei's. Before more quailing could ensue, and before Issei could faint with all of the attention he was getting, the gym teacher blew her whistle to silence the students. Alright, that's enough. I'll be the one assigning teams. Don't even think about complaining if your partners aren't who you want to have. And the gym teacher did just that. With two teams having 12 players each, Issei was assigned to one with an even amount of girls-boys. One of the girls on his team was Kadis, who immediately approached Issei and placed a hand on his shoulder. Let's win this game together, Issei-kun. Why yeah. Issei agrees while stroking one of the locks of hair behind his head. Murayama, along with some of the girls on the opposing team, had disappointed expressions when they learned that they would be playing against Issei, but some boys, two of whom are the perverted duo, were getting excited to play. The students got to their spots on the field. As soon as the coach saw that they were ready, she blew her whistle signaling the game to begin. Aim for the pretty boy. One of the boys yells on the team that's opposite of Issei's. Issei heard the shout of one of the opposing boys making an attempt to hit him with a ball. Watch out. Before Issei could be taken out, a girl on his team managed to catch the ball in her hands while shooting a glare at the opponent who threw it. That's an out. The boy growled in defeat. As he was moving out of the way of the rest of the game, the girl that saved Issei looked over to him and smiled. I got your back, Issei-kun. Issei blinked at his teammate twice before nodding in thanks. But then, he suddenly felt his instincts kick in and quickly dropped on all fours in a push-up position. As he did, the students and the coach looked to see that he dodged another ball from the enemy team. Issei looked over to where the ball landed after subconsciously dodging it and kept his gaze on it with broadened eyes. I didn't even know that another attack was coming. That was a close one. Another teammate of his said after witnessing Issei's action. Come on. Get up before someone takes advantage of your position. Issei's head snaps back to his teammates and quickly did as he was told. He then sets his eyes forward towards his opponents. As he did, one of the girls of the opposing team was aiming a ball at one of Issei's teammates, a boy. The boy didn't pay attention since he was focused on the other teammates, but once the corner of his eye noticed the ball hurling at him, he froze in place, expecting to get hit. Piff. The boy flinched at the sound of impact, but his eyes slowly open when he realizes that he didn't get hit. What the? Hyoudou. Much to his disbelief, the boy's eyes revealed that it was Issei who caught the ball before it could hit his teammate. Looking at his face, he gasps to see the wide-eyed, iris-contracted stare on the ball he caught. But that expression remaining, Issei then sets his sights on another opponent who squeaked at the stare and went to move out of the way. But Issei already threw the ball as soon as he tried to run, smacking him right on the back, forcing the boy to fall onto the ground because of the impact. Issei's turn glare remained on the opponent until the whistle to signal the 2 outs brought the brown-haired man back to reality. After gasping, he then looks down towards his torso with a shocked expression. There I go again. Issei thought. First with mom, and now in dodgeball. Just how did I get this quick? He then slowly lifts his hands towards himself. And what I did there? I hope I didn't break his back. Issei lifts his head up towards the boy he took out of the game and saw he could walk just fine, making him sigh a breath of relief, thankful that his attack wasn't too brutal on the gym classmate. Hey. Issei was snapped out of his thoughts when the boy he saved tapped him on the shoulder, prompting him to turn his head to him. Thanks for that. Why? Yeah. No problem. After the brief exchange, Issei continued to play the dodgeball game while mentally wondering what else will happen, both in the game and to himself during it. And whatever happens out there, he's hoping that it won't be anything too crazy or anything that would make everyone call him a superhuman, even though there are a rare few boys who are already believing that. But the school day finally over, Issei was now by himself in a hallway of the academy, leaning his back on the wall, spending most of his time gazing at the diamond mark on his right hand's palm. Issei sighs as he kept his eyes on it. Ever since that mark appeared on his hand, his performance in almost everything has increased greatly. He felt more aware of his surroundings, more conscious, and what confused him the most, his body felt stronger and faster. The dodgeball game from hours ago was what brought the young man to this revelation. Throughout the game, he remembered being able to dodge every single ball that was thrown at him, catch every ball that went for him, and mostly his teammates, and what surprised him greater, how precise his aim and throwing were when he was prompted to be on the offense. Issei grimaced when he recalled the faces of the male opponents after he took out 3 more of the enemy players. They looked afraid of him. And who wouldn't after seeing how much pain they were in after getting hit by Issei's strong throws. His eyes stay locked onto the black mark, now trying to figure out how he got it. With all of that strength and wit he has today, he can't help but think that it's because of that 4-point diamond after being revived by Denichi Otsutsuki, the god who told him about the supernatural before bringing him back from the dead. Hyoudou. Issei jumped when he heard someone call out to him. Turning his head left, he looked to see Jinshiro running up towards him. Oh, Jinshiro, how are you? After he asked, Issei noticed that his friend's expression was that of bewilderment. I'm doing fine. Saji replies before pointing a finger at him. But dude, I was told that you were incredible today. Eh? Issei rose a brow at him. Whatever do you mean? I've heard about what happened at your gym class from the other students. Issei's eyes widen at Jinshiro. From what I've gathered from them, you were a very fast runner and that you had the greatest dodgeball game your team has ever played. Oh. Issei was a little surprised when he learned that Saji was told about what happened in his gym class. Well, I'm just as surprised as anyone, to be honest. When I first woke up today before coming to school, I've learned that my movement was greater than normal when I helped my mom from tripping over. As for the game, I really don't know how I got faster and a little stronger, it just happened. Now it was Yunshiro's turn to be surprised. And when Issei told him this, he saw that the brown-haired man's face looked confused and frustrated. But he didn't notice his eyes shifting to and from his right hand every few seconds. Wait. Does this have to do with last night? Swallowing a lump, Junshiro walks closer to his friend and places a hand on his shoulder, getting him to look back at him. Hey, did something happen, Hyoudou? You know, yesterday. Issei stiffened for a moment. He remained silent for 6 more seconds before sighing and turning his eyes towards his right hand, uncertainty written all over his face. Junshiro. I don't think you'd believe me even if I told you. Saji's eyes broadened at Issei. And judging by his expression, he looked very conflicted about telling him what happened. But with what Junshiro has learned weeks ago before befriending Issei, he was betting that what he would tell him would be the truth. Hey, I've heard of crazier things, man. Just go ahead and tell me, bud. I'll hear you out. Issei blinks twice at the kindness his friend was displaying to him. After thinking about it, he takes one more deep breath before setting his stare onto the blonde man. Well, you see. Last night I was. Look everyone, it's the two great one-isamas. As if on cue, Issei and Junshiro turned their heads over to where the male student was pointing his finger as he announced it. Upon eye contact, the students looked to see 2 familiar third years walking down the stairs, Ria's Gremory and Akeno Himejima. The reactions from the students are about what Issei and Saji expected. Most of the boys kept their stares locked onto them while whispering to each other on how gorgeous they are, with some wishing that it was possible to date them. Even a few of the girls were infatuated by their beauty. The duo did get some jealous stares from a few of the other third years, but a few of them stared on with admiration and love. Junshiro listened to the students' reactions to the one-isamas and chuckled while shaking his head. Man, Gremory Senpai and Himejima Senpai are quite popular, wouldn't you say, Hyoudou? Issei felt Junshiro nudge his shoulder with his arm and shared a mild laugh with him while scratching the back of his head. Why yeah. I'm sure there's a reason so many people like them. After saying that, Issei sets his eyes onto the third years and watches them get to the bottom of the stairs. As they did, Issei began to have this feeling in his right arm again, but unlike the first time and previous times, this one was a little more milder. There it is again. Issei thought as he took a quick glance at his arm before looking back at Ria's and Akeno. And this time, it's kicking in when I keep looking at them. Why is that? Just as he mentally questioned that, his heart skipped a beat when he noticed Ria's locking eyes with his own, despite her head facing forward as she and Akeno were walking across the hallway, which made the girls get a little closer to him and Junshiro. And while she was looking at him, she gave him a quick smile before passing by him. What? What was that about? Rob. Ah. Junshiro zips his head to his friend, and the 2 third years stopped walking when they hear Issei grunt in pain, while grabbing onto his right arm's wrist in reaction to said pain. When Issei did that, he locked his eyes onto his palm as the shivering feeling in his arm began to grow stronger, causing his eyes to broaden further and his brows to furrow with gritted teeth. Hyoudou, what's wrong? After asking him in worry, Saji looks at Issei to see that his stare was still on his palm. Ria's and Akeno looked where Issei was looking too, and as they did, the girls managed to see the 4-sided diamond mark on it, causing Ria's to raise a brow at it. I'm okay. The 2 girls hear Issei reply to Saji before putting his right hand behind himself, unknowingly showing his black mark to Ria's and Akeno, prompting them to get a closer look at it while still listening in to the boys' conversations. My wrist just cramped up for a moment, but it doesn't hurt anymore. Junshiro still looked at him with worry. From how he sounded earlier, he was starting to act a little weird. And for some reason, something was telling the blonde boy that it has something to do with the cramp in his right arm's wrist. Anyway. Issei continues, hoping to move on to another topic away from his sudden pain and shivering in his arm. I've been meaning to ask Junshiro, how's Ria-san? I never got to see her today. I hope she's well. Fusaka-san. Junshiro pauses for a moment, remembering how his fellow council member acted both last night and today after hearing from his kaichu about what happened to him. And while he was working, he would sometimes hear Ria whisper his name every minute out of worry for him, while working slower than normal, as she too knows what's really going on in the supernatural world. She's been busier with council work than usual today. Saji answers, wanting to be respectful of Ria's privacy and feelings towards his friend. But other than that, she's good. She even told me to tell you hello and hopes that you're doing okay. Issei smiles in gratitude. Then when you get back to the council, can you tell her I said hello back and I'm hoping to meet with her again soon. Saji noticed how Issei looked a little stressed despite his small smile and softened his eyes towards his friend. Damn, was yesterday that rough for you, dude? Issei releases a sheepish laugh while scratching his cheek. You can say that. Realizing how deep on the subject he was about to get, Issei slaps his hands onto his cheeks, bewildering Jinshiro, Rias, and Akeno. Oh. I just remembered. I promised my mom that I would go out and buy some food for my cat, Midnight. The brown-haired man then begins to run off to do just that. I better get moving. See you later, Jinshiro. Hey. Hyoudou. Jinshiro tried to call out to Issei, but he was already gone, slightly shocking him on how fast he ran out of the scene. After looking where he left for a few more seconds, he sighs and starts to walk his own path back to the office of the student council. As he couldn't stop thinking about what happened to Issei. Hyoudou. Whatever happened yesterday, I hope you're okay. With Jinshiro gone, Rias and Akeno kept their eyes on where Issei once was for a moment before looking back at each other. After heading back home with the cat food he bought like he promised his mother and having finished the dinner Mickey prepared for the family, Issei went inside of his room to get a quick change in clothes. He was now wearing a black hoodie with its sleeves pulled up and a pair of short cashes. After getting everything else he needs, Issei walks out of his room downstairs into the living room and approaches the front door, catching his parents and Midnight's attention. Issei, where are you off to? Issei's mom asks, noticing his new attire. I'm going for an afternoon jog. Issei answers while getting his shoes on. Be careful out there, son. Goro instructs with a mix of worry and seriousness. After what happened to you yesterday. Issei understood what his father was talking about and nodded at him with an assuring smile. Don't worry, Dad. I'll be extra careful today. Issei then guides his hand towards the door's knob. Once he placed it there, he felt something touch his leg and looked down to see Midnight looking up at him and meowing. Hey, don't worry, girl. Issei says kindly, crouching to the cat's level to scratch her cheek. It's just an afternoon jog. I'll be back soon, I promise. Midnight didn't look too sure about it. She kept her paw on his leg while Issei began to open the door. Well, I'm off. Run safely, Issei. Mom says while waving at his son, who waved back before closing the door behind himself. Once Issei was out of the house, Midnight kept her eyes on the door while releasing a trill that sounded like anguish. Aw, it's okay, Midnight. Mickey says to the cat while gently petting her head, prompting her to look up at her. You're not the only one who's worried about Issei. Midnight then allows Mickey to pick her up and carry her in her arms. As she was walking back to the couch to sit with the cat, Mickey takes one more look at the door with softened eyes, praying in her mind that her son won't suffer another accident like the one he explained last night. After walking 5 feet from his house, Issei tapped his toes on the ground twice while pulling up the sleeves of his hoodie. With another double check of his pockets, he takes a deep breath and faces forward with narrowed eyes. Alright. Here we go. With his left foot forward, Issei began his jog around his neighborhood. He started slow, paying very close attention to his surroundings as he kept moving. After 2 minutes pass, Issei's speed began to slightly increase without him realizing it because of how focused he was. The clear feeling he felt back in gym class even kicked in as well. While he was focusing, Issei began to experience the same phenomenons as he did back in gym class, but there was something new to add to it. As he ran, he could hear other people's conversations from afar both in front and behind him. But it wasn't the usual distance of hearing at a long range, he heard them clearly, all while he kept running. And when he was faced with some obstacles that aren't necessarily dangerous, Issei would jump over them, sidestep, and dodge them all with no problem. It surprised Issei that he was able to do so very quickly because of how fast he was sprinting, but he kept the thoughts to himself to think about later after he's done. After a couple more hours of running, making it now dark outside, but not too dark to be late, Issei decides to stop so he can catch his breath. At least that's what he thought before discovering that once again, like the jogging session back at gym class, he didn't breathe as hard as he usually would when he ran for such a long period of time. Just as I thought. Issei frowns with furrowed brows while looking down at his own body. I'm not feeling as tired as I usually would if I went as fast as I did and if I ran this long. The young man then places his right hand on his cheek. And what's with those slick moves I pulled off there? There was no way I could have this kind of agility until now. How could I suddenly have such skills while strangely being so full of energy? Issei removes his hand off of himself to take another look at the mark on his palm. He kept his stare on the diamond, still under the impression that this was the reason for the sudden changes in his body. Hey, he met a god that granted him a second chance in life, so at this point, he wouldn't be surprised anymore if it has to do with the mark. Sighing a breath of confusion, Issei starts to walk his way home, deciding to continue his puzzling there. Well, the corner of his eye caught a glimpse of a couple holding each other's hands while smiling and laughing. As he walked past them, his eyes broadened a little with a blush to see that the man was lightly groping his girlfriend's butt, earning a pout from her, and responding with a stronger pinch back on his own rear. Couples are getting more publicly daring these days. Issei thought while rolling his eyes at the perverted actions of the couple. But seeing them didn't stop him from thinking about his current relationship with Ryakusaka. He still had yet to ask her out on a date. The problem is, he's not ready to do it yet, or at least, he doesn't feel ready. If he was going to ask Rya out, he wanted the request to be the best it could be without it feeling awkward for the both of them. But suddenly, Issei's thoughts about Rya came to an abrupt halt when his right arm began to twitch, making him stop walking. Issei's expression became that of worry, recognizing this feeling in his arm all too well. There's that irritating feeling again. Issei thought as he grabbed hold of his wrist while looking around his surroundings. But this time, it's more dreadful. Swallowing a lump, Issei treads forward towards home again with the feeling in his arm still going off. He kept looking left and right as he kept getting this nagging thought that he was being watched by someone. Or worse, hunted. After taking 3 more steps, Issei's instinct suddenly went off and snapped his head towards an alleyway between 2 houses, thinking that someone was there. But once his eyes light in that direction, he saw that nobody was really there. It took Issei a moment to process this before sighing and pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. My mind must be playing with me tonight. You can sense my presence, human. Issei's eyes widened with a tch. When he heard someone talking to him with mild surprise in his voice. Zipping back towards the alleyway, he gasped to see a middle-aged man with short black hair and dark blue eyes, wearing a gray trench coat over a white dress shirt, black pants and shoes, and a matching fedora on his head. I must say, this is quite the surprise. The man says with a grin while adjusting his hat. Bumping into someone who's supposed to have been taken care of by her. Issei didn't know how to respond, but the way that person phrased his sentence made the young man shudder with his right arm shaking harder, as if to warn him that he needs to be cautious of him. Who are you? The man chuckles before widening his smirk. Who I am is not important. What is important is your apparent survival against Rainer. Who? Issei didn't quite understand what the stranger was talking about. Before he could ask who exactly this Rainer is, he saw the man frown while slowly walking towards him. And as he was, Issei could see the dangerous and interrogative stare he was given, while the man was now frowning. Tell me, kid, how exactly did you avoid death? With alarm bells going off in his head, Issei turned right around and bolted right out of the area, slightly taking aback the stranger. Issei kept running and running while shifting his eyes behind himself. It was at a time like this that one should concentrate on running away from danger, and that man in the trench coat was very imposing, from how he laughed and grinned to how sinister his stare was when he tried to approach him. Despite getting far away from the stranger, the shivering feeling in his right arm didn't go away, which served as fuel for most of his sprinting. He kept going for 5 more minutes until he decided to come to a halt. Again, he only breathed lightly despite how far and fast he ran. Issei then lifts his right arm up and gently grabs hold of the wrist. As he was stroking it, his eyes worked their way up from the wrist to the mark on his palm. It's dying down. Issei whispers to himself while closing his hand a few times. After breathing in relief, Issei looks down from his hand to what's in front of him, and what he saw made him gasp. The young brown-haired man has found himself in a park with the water still going. But this wasn't any old park, it was the exact same park that Issei took Yuma to on the night where she grew feathered wings and stabbed him with a spear made of light. The memory made Issei shudder as he placed a hand onto his stomach, still feeling the betrayal of the black-haired girl, while still not expecting to be in such a place. Whoa. How did I? Just as he was musing, Issei suddenly remembered something and quickly darted his eyes towards the spot where he was supposedly slain. Once he did, his eyes widened further to see that there was not a single trace of his blood left. It looked so clean that it looked like the stabbing never happened. What? But how? There's no way it would take a single day to clean up so much blood. And why wasn't there a report of an attack on TV? Surely, someone would have noticed it when they walked by that spot. Issei continued to try to wrap his head around how the scene was as clean as it is, as well as how no one made a fuss about the blood that was once there. But then, the feeling that warned him of potential danger has started ringing in his right arm again. And as if he was told to do so, Issei instinctively looked up and saw something he did not expect to see. Above him, he could see the exact same man that was in the alleyway. But what shocked Issei the most was how he was up in the sky. No. Those wings. Issei thought with contracted eyes of fear as he saw the familiar black appendages on the stranger's back. They're just like a mono-sans. At this point, Issei began to quake in total dread, with his arm doing the most shivering, as the man used his feathered wings to slowly descend downwards while keeping his eyes on Issei. Once he landed, he softly laughs at the boy while setting his right hand on his side. "Ha. You're fast, kid." After he said that, a dark blue light appeared in front of his palm. But not fast enough. Issei releases a breath of shock when he observed the light at the stranger's hand further. The light kept flashing for a moment before it started forming a familiar weapon, only that it's blue instead of red like Yuuma's and is differently shaped than hers. Him too. After creating the spear in his hand, the man looked back at Issei while adjusting his hat with his other hand, making the brown-haired man take a step back. There seems to be a decent amount of magic within you, kid," he says while twirling his light spear around. "Perhaps you've used that exact same magic to escape Rainer." Issei clicks his tongue at what the stranger was saying, still not understanding what exactly he was talking about. "Normally, I'd just let her know that you're still around, but since Rainer can act like a spoiled bitch whenever things don't go well." The stranger pauses for a moment to take aim at Issei, who twitched at his action. "I think I'll just go ahead and finish the job so she won't realize that you've somehow survived her wrath." Issei watches the man chuckle again before reading his arm to throw the spear. "Oh no. It's just like last night. I'm going to get killed." With a teeth-showing grin, the stranger threw his spear at Issei, aiming for his heart to make sure that he stays dead. But just as he threw it, the man gasps with broadened eyes when he sees something that he didn't expect at all. Issei dodged his spear of light. And when he did, Issei felt like he just dodged a bullet. When he moved his body out of the way just in the nick of time, it felt to him like he was temporarily trapped in slow motion as he watched the spear of light just fly by him, nearly cutting his skin as he saw just how close it was to piercing him. After dodging, Issei and the man see the spear hit a nearby tree. It remained impaled there before it vanished into a dark blue light, which faded away afterward. The man looked towards the tree it hit with bewilderment still in his face before looking back at Issei, who looked right back at him with a panicked expression of his own. "No way," the stranger said. "That was my fastest attack." He then points at Issei. "But I don't get it. Rainer said that it was an easy kill. And when I threw my spear, you avoided it like it's nothing. And now wait just a minute." Issei snaps, having finally worked up the nerve to say something to the man. "Why are you trying to kill me? Who is this Rainer person you keep talking about? And why did you say that I was supposed to die by her hands?" The stranger rose a brow at Issei. "Have you forgotten what happened yesterday, kid?" "What about yesterday?" Issei questions the stranger. "All I know is that I helped a girl named Yuma Amano-san around my neighborhood before she grew the same pair of wings like yours and..." Issei pauses when he was about to say the part where she betrays him. As he thought about it further, his eyes slowly got wider and wider as he now realizes the correlation between last night's events and what the stranger was talking about. Finally putting the pieces together, "Ha, kid." The man chuckles before creating another object out of his blue light, revealing it to take the form of a simple sword. "That's right. That Yuma girl you're talking about, that's Rainer. Yuma Amano was just a fake name she used so she wouldn't get noticed by our enemies, so she can take you out for having a dangerous sacred gear." Issei remained stunned at the revelation. Just how does this stranger know about what has happened to him last night? Did he know the girl? Or perhaps he was in cahoots with her the whole time? All of these questions were making Issei shiver more and more, continuing to be unsure what to make of it all. "Well, not that it matters much," the stranger says devilishly before pointing his light sword at Issei with a dark wide grin. "You're still a dead man, kid. This time, I'll be more direct." The man was about to charge forward in an attempt to decapitate Issei. But before either of them could make a move, the boys jump back when a yellow spear of light lands in between them, with the object being a little closer to the stranger than Issei. As he made eye contact with the light object, Issei's right hand began to shake once more, and he felt his instincts tell him that someone was approaching on his right. Turning his head there, with the stranger following his stare, Issei's eyes widen when he sees a tall and buxom woman with yellow eyes and long, navy blue hair, wearing a maroon top that showed of her breasts and cleavage, a matching colored miniskirt, and black-heeled shoes. Upon looking at her face, Issei saw the sternest expression she's ever seen on a woman. But what shocked him the most was that she had the same black feathered wings as the stranger. "Oh no," Issei thought as he watches the blue-haired woman create another lance of yellow light in her right hand. Another one. Issei stiffens up with contracted eyes as of fear when her glare lands on him as she got closer and closer. He thought that she was after him too since she possesses the same wings and was walking over towards him. But as she got close enough, the woman walked past Issei and stops towards the man in the trench coat with her lance aiming towards him. "You're not touching him, don't Issei." Issei drew a blank at her choice of words. But before he could say anything, the stranger, now known as Donaseek, laughs out loud and stands his ground. I had a feeling you'd arrive, Calwerner. But that won't mean I'll step down from doing what needs to be done. Calwerner's expression becomes harsher as Donaseek aims his sword to cut her down, only for her to block the attack, starting a battle between the two fallen angels. Issei leaps backwards while he still gripped his wrist. He really expected that woman to have the same cause as Donaseek, but for her to protect him instead, he was definitely caught off guard there. With gritted teeth, Calwerner strikes at Donaseek's light sword before taking a quick glance at Issei. Leave this area, Issei Hyoudou. Issei does a double take at the woman's instructions. How? How do you know my name? There's no time to explain. Calwerner snaps before pushing Donaseek away from herself and Issei. Get the hell out of here, now. Issei didn't have to think twice before turning around and sprinting his way towards home. Since he wants to live, he would rather be anywhere else than here. Donaseek saw Issei fleeing and tries to throw his sword at him, only to be stopped with a knee in the gut by Calwerner. Issei kept running and running until he could no longer see the two feather-winged people fighting each other. Once that was the case, he stopped for a moment to look over behind him. First, another feather-winged person like Amano-san comes to try and kill me, and now another one, which is a woman, arrived to protect me. Issei knew that the supernatural is a real thing after what has happened to him on that dreadful night yesterday, and he recalled the Otsutsuki God telling him that he will have to deal with it, but he never thought that he would be as hunted as this Donaseek stranger made it sound like to be. Shaking his head, Issei continued to make his way home as fast as he can. Nothing else matters now. He can think about it later as soon as he gets home. But unbeknownst to the boy, a brown-eyed bat with a round body, bird-like legs, and a tail, has watched everything that transpired with Issei. And after seeing it all, including two fallen angels fighting, the bat took off to another location. Issei has finally returned home. After greeting his parents, who welcomed him home, he entered his bedroom with his cat in tow. After closing the door behind him with Midnight hopping on his bed, Issei sighs deeply and plops right next to the cat with a deep sigh of frustration. What the hell? Issei whispers as he plops himself on his chair. Just what is going on right now? Right after he asked himself this, Issei felt his cat jump right onto his lap, prompting him to look down at her and blink. After meowing, Midnight brushes her face onto his chest in an attempt to make him feel better. It kinda worked since Issei started to pet her with a small smile, but his mind was still on the fallen angels. One that killed him, another that attempted to murder him, and the last one that protected him. The god calls those with black feather wings fallen angels. Issei recalls before lifting his right hand up to look at his mark. But the one with blue hair decided to shield me instead of what Amano-san and that man have tried to do. Issei sighs, finding the puzzle he has found for himself to be very confusing. I can't make heads and tails on this. Issei says before looking down at Midnight. What about you? The cat blinks at Issei once before lifting her front paw up and presses it against his cheek. Issei rose a brow at her as she lightly rubs it a few times before taking her paw off of him. He chuckles shortly after with a small smirk. Can't say I blame you. After a few more moments of reflecting on what just happened, Issei decided to call it a night and get prepared for bed, while Midnight hopped onto her usual spot on the bed so she can use his lap as her cushion. As he tucked himself and his cat in, Issei couldn't help but wonder what will happen next. Will he be attacked again? Will he encounter a supernatural being that isn't a fallen angel? What about that blue-haired woman that protected him from her own race? He didn't know, and right now, he didn't care. All that matters to him is that he gets to live another day. But how tomorrow and the days after that will go, well, the only way to find out was to wait as time goes by. On the next day, after another school day has wrapped up, Issei remained seated at his desk while peering deeply into the black diamond mark on his palm. His mind was still on what happened last night. And he continued to wonder if he'll encounter any more crazy events once heads home. The Otsutuki God did say that he would encounter the supernatural, so Issei knows that he may see something different. But what it is, he is unsure about it. And whether he's prepared for it or not, he'll have to deal with it. This is how the world is now. His mind then lingered onto himself. During his biology class hours ago, he and his classmates got their tests returned after they were graded. And when he got his, much to his shock, he discovered that he earned a perfect score on his test. As he expected, he got many shocked reactions from his classmates and a surprised but proud response from his biology teacher. And as usual, the perverted duo tried to pry him for how he got smarter, with Motohama thinking that he cheated. But thankfully, Cadis managed to shut them up so he could move on in slight peace. As he thought about his perfect score on the test, Issei was now questioning if all of those sudden natural enhancements he got also played with his memory banks to be as greatly improved as his senses, agility, speed, and strength. And once again, it all went back to that mysterious mark on his palm. Good evening, everyone. Upon hearing someone enter the classroom, everyone looks towards the door and has mixed reactions when they see that it's Hyoudou Kiba, who has entered the room with a kind wave and smile. The reactions were the most usual. Pretty much all the boys except for Issei glared daggers at the blonde, while most of the girls squealed and waved towards Hyoudou. Oh my god, Kiba-kun is here. He's just as gorgeous as ever. Yeah, he may be handsome, but he'll never be as cute as Issei-kun. Boy. Are you saying that Issei is better than Hyoudou-kun? That's right. Got a problem with that. Issei cringed at the sight of the fangirls arguing over who was better, Issei or Hyoudou. My god. It's like Team Edward versus Team Jacob all over again. Issei thought before shivering his legs with his eyes becoming small dots. Why did mom find those movies appealing again? Shaking off that memory from a few years ago, Issei looks back over to Hyoudou and broadens his eyes a bit to see that he is at his desk looking right at him with his usual friendly smile. Oh, Kiba, hello. Issei says. So. What brings you here? Issei watches Hyoudou lightly bow his head to him, making the brown-haired boy tilt his head at him. Issei, I apologize if this sounds rather sudden, but can you please come with me? While Issei cocked a brow at Hyoudou, the fangirls of both boys watch on with shocked expressions of their own, with both sides wondering where this will go. Hey? Why do you want me to go with you? Is there something you need? Actually, it's my butchu, Ria-senpai, who's requesting your presence at the Occult Research Club. She asked for me to take you there. With most of the students surprised by this revelation, as was Issei to an extent, he started to think what this is about and gave Hyoudou a kind shake of his head. Sorry, but I don't think I'll be able to join any clubs. Oh no, it has nothing to do with that. Ria-senpai just wishes to speak with you, that's all. Speak with me about what? Hyoudou's smile widens while he closed his eyes. You'll find out after I escort you there. Ria-senpai is very insistent that you have a talk with her today. Issei gave Hyoudou a deadpan for about 4 seconds before sighing. Okay, I'll bite. Lead the way, Kiba. Nodding, Hyoudou waits for Issei to gather his belongings. And after standing up from his chair to follow him, his eyebrow twitches when he hears the girls begin to gossip on what's going down between the two. But thankfully, not only were Katis and Murayama intolerant to this, but when the two boys left, Issei could no longer hear them, sparing him from any more embarrassing things that would come out of the gossipers' mouths. Okay, so I just need to follow Kiba to the Occult Research Club. Surely, it won't be too bad, right? Unfortunately, for Issei, he would have to put up with more girls as he and Hyoudou would walk by them. Like his classmates, the girls they passed by gasped dramatically at the sight of Issei and Hyoudou walking together. There were some girls who just said hello to the boys kindly with both of them waving back, but there were also a few who cooed at Issei and Hyoudou being together, making the brown-haired man shiver while he kept staring at the ground. Kiba. How much further is your club? Don't worry, Issei. Kiba whispers back as the two boys exit the school. We're almost there. Issei rose a brow at him. The Occult Research Club was not in the school building itself. Just where could they possibly locate themselves? Here we are. Once they arrived at what Hyoudou claims to be their destination, Issei rose his brows at the area of the school that he did not expect him to take him there. The old school building? Issei questions Hyoudou before looking back at him. That's where your club is at. That's right. And the school board is okay with that? Yes, that's correct. Hyoudou saw an expression on Issei's face that told him that he didn't buy it and laughed while scratching his cheek. I know, Issei. I was just as surprised as you are when I learned that the club will take place here. After opening his eyes, Hyoudou saw that Issei remained suspicious of him. You're not gonna sacrifice me to a demon, are you? Hyoudou gasps at Issei before putting his hands up in defense. No, of course not. I promise that this club is only for the purpose of studying the supernatural, not for summoning demons. Issei kept his deadpan stare onto Hyoudou as he watched him open the door for him. Come, this way. Issei stood still for a moment before nodding and following Hyoudou's lead. As the boys entered the old school building, Issei began to feel his right hand shake a little again. But since it was mild, he was able to ignore it and continue to venture inside while keeping up with Hyoudou. Ever since last night when the fallen angel Donasek tried to kill him again, Issei started to take those feelings seriously and be very cautious of what's to come next. So, with his right hand balled into a fist, he continued onward, hoping to figure out what Riaz wants to speak to him about and that he and the others are safe despite this warning signal he was getting from his shivering hand. That's it guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.